very inconvenient.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's time for the fourth day of the session. Good morning. I declare this sitting is open. I remind the members that they should insert their badge before taking the floor. As you begin your speak, please press the microphone button once only. And also I remind the Assembly that members who have not submitted annual declaration of interest are required to start any intervention in the plenary with an oral declaration of interest under paragraph 20 of the Code of Conduct for members of the Assembly. Now, for the next item of business this morning is the debate on the report titled Saving the Lives of Migrants at Sea and Protecting Their Human Rights. It's document 16/19/5, presented by Mr. Paolo Pisco on behalf of the Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons. In order to finish by 11:10, we must interrupt the list of speakers at about 11 o'clock to allow time for a reply and the vote. I call now Mr. Paolo Pisco, the rapporteur. You have 7 minutes now, and then after, please respect the time limit of 3 minutes intervention at the end to reply the debate. Thank you, and Mr. Pisco, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear colleagues, 10 years ago, one of the biggest tragedies happened in the central Mediterranean, one of the deadliest routes in the world. Around 1,000 migrants died or disappeared in the sea in a journey from Libya to Lampedusa. 2 years ago, the Adriana vessel sank in the Greek coast of Pylos, causing the death of more than 600 people. Just some days ago, IOM reported more 2 shipwrecks in the central Mediterranean, with at least 60 people dead or missing in the coast of Libya. And we find a similar dramatic situation in the Spanish coast and in the English Channel. Along the last 10 years, according to the United Nations Organization for Refugees, at least 34,000 people died or disappeared in sea, in the hope to reach the European countries. But paradoxically, this reality seems to be non-existent because media seem to have lost the interest in those repeated tragedies, apparently without solution. The fact is, unsafe boats crowded of migrants keep on crossing the seas every day, and the Mediterranean is transformed into a huge graveyard. Dear colleagues, we must recognize that we have failed completely in stopping this shameful massacre of desperate people, knowing very well that when they start the journey, the probability of dying is very, very big. But even though they risk in the hope of a decent life, men, women, children, all equally vulnerable, although some more than others. And how Europe reacts. Europe and some member states try to create the illusion that migrants are not arriving and that tragedies don't happen, externalizing the management of migration flows, which is for many a death sentence, especially if they fall into the hands of militias and mafias that are benefiting from European funds and at the same time making a lot of money with the business of human trafficking. Like in Libya and Tunisia, where migrants are victims of assassinations and slavery, sexual violence, torture, human trafficking, and other forms of inhuman treatment. So, no doubts about our complicity in this horror. Therefore, the cooperation with Libya and Tunisian authorities is unacceptable and must be suspended and re-evaluated at the light of the respect for human rights. This also means that the approach to the migration flows must be radically different, but not in a way extreme right parties and populist movements want, because they live in a dark place where there is no empathy, nor humanity or solidarity. The approach must be morally and politically honest, taking into consideration respect for human rights, the shortage of labor force, demographic decline, and sustainability of social security systems. Migrants give a relevant contribution to dynamize and regenerate our societies. We just have to manage it in the proper way. This report wants to remind that if all the framework of international law were respected, namely the law of the sea expressed in several legal instruments, thousands of lives would be spared. Thousands of human beings would not fall into the hands of smugglers and criminals and would not suffer so much violence and inhuman treatment. European waters should be considered as maritime humanitarian spaces. Of course, if there is no solidarity among member states, it's difficult to have solidarity towards migrants. Therefore, a true solidarity and a shared responsibility among member states, together with more human and financial resources to search and rescue operations, are fundamental. As is fundamental to build an effective coordination among state authorities and civil societies, namely NGOs specialized in search and rescue operations. It's not acceptable that maritime authorities know about a boat in distress and don't send the alert and act immediately, often the cause of many deaths. But for this, countries must stop creating all kinds of absurd administrative difficulties to the activities of NGOs working in search and rescue operations, with inspections to boats with the only purpose of applying sanctions, apprehend their boats, unbearable rules for disembarking migrants, like happens in Italy with the decree Piantedosi. It happened, for instance, with the boat Geobardens from the organization Doctors Without Borders, forced to suspend its activities, and with the Sea-Watch 5 boat, 1 year ago, in spite of their important work in saving thousands of migrant lives. That's why humanitarian assistance should be recognized and never criminalized. Unfortunately, the European Union and member states disinvested in search and rescue capacities to reinforce the border patrol priority, and they should not. On the contrary, operations like Mare Nostrum, Triton, Sophia, and saved thousands of lives. But it seems that in our days, saving lives is not the priority. Dear colleague, our Assembly has an imperative to defend the right to life and protect migrants' rights and dignity. A more human and effective approach to migration flows is needed, and it is clearly possible to protect borders and defend our security without breaching international law. Above all, we must not close the eyes to the tragedy that we have at our doors. Dear colleagues, since that is my last time in this plenary, allow me to let some words of gratitude to the irreplaceable work of the Council of Europe. I also want to express my gratitude for the support that I always had from the Secretariat in the Migration Committee. Thank you very much. And please, colleagues, never let down this fight for human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pisco, and also for your last session. Good luck. Then we have the speakers on behalf of the political group, and we start with the presentation of ALDE Group, German Michael.
Madam President, yesterday here in this hemicycle, the Prime Minister of Malta said that the solution to migrant crossings by sea was on the land, not on the sea. I agree with him. Trying to take dangerous actions at sea with vessels which are unseaworthy puts those in the boats at serious risk of harm and death. This report and its recommendations correctly draw attention to the laws, the rules and the regulations of actions at sea. And I draw your attention to paragraph 3 of the draft resolution, where they are all listed. These are rules which, at their heart, concern saving lives and removing people from danger. These laws and rules are not just those of the ECHR, but a multiplicity of interlocking international laws and conventions spanning seas across the globe, the majority of which are designated as international waters. The recommendations before us today contain a plea for respect for these laws and for those countries who have not ratified them to do so rapidly. The key issue placed before us is the matter of pushback of boats. This action endangers both the lives of all those in the boat and fails to distinguish between genuine asylum seekers and economic migrants. We should be punishing the smugglers, not the migrants. A week or so ago, I spent a day on the coastline of northern France with French authorities, looking at all aspects of the migrant small boat people smuggling they're dealing with, and I learned a huge amount. Simple fact, if you put a knife through one of these boats, these inflatables, it will fold in upon itself, and all the people in the middle, squashed and huddled there, are then subject to drowning quite instantly. So they want to try it to stop the engines, the motors from working. But all the answers I got from the French authorities that you have to work upstream if you want to stop these cruel people smugglers. These actions against smugglers has the potential to dent the number of boat crossings, but they're not a solution on their own when we have some troubled countries on Europe's doorsteps. The 3 things that come out of this report are very important recommendations. Safety at sea applies universally in international law, and for people to put people at risk when they have a duty of protection is not simply a request. 2, solutions that are to be found on the land rather than the sea. And thirdly, that discrimination at sea is objectionable, and it is particularly harmful when faced with rescues from totally unsuitable craft. Treating all migrants as illegal rather than irregular or undocumented means that those fleeing for protection are denied the safety our international laws require. I recommend we all approve this very important recommendations in this report.
And the next speaker from UEL, Mr. Vincent Glazet.
Dear Chair, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, vielen Dank dem Berichterstatter für den sehr interessanten und guten Bericht. Vor wenigen Tagen erst sind erneut Dutzende Menschen im Mittelmeer ertrunken. Seit 2 Schiffbrüchen vor der libyschen Küste werden über 60 Personen vermisst, darunter auch Frauen und Kinder. Laut der Internationalen Organisation für Migration sind alleine in diesem Jahr mindestens 743 Menschen auf der Flucht nach Europa im Mittelmeer gestorben. Diese Menschen starben nicht, weil sie ein Risiko unterschätzt hatten, sondern weil sichere und legale Einreisewege schlichtweg fehlen. Deshalb fordern wir: Schafft endlich sichere Einreisewege. Gestern hat die deutsche Bundesregierung entschieden, die Haushaltsmittel für Seenotrettung komplett zu streichen. Ich finde, und das muss ich ganz klar sagen, das ist ein fatales Signal in diesen Zeiten. Denn statt Schutz zu bieten, delegieren bereits jetzt europäische Staaten ihre Verantwortung an Regime und Milizen, die systematisch Menschenrechte verletzen. Malta etwa überlässt entgegen völkerrechtlichen Pflichten seine Such- und Rettungszonen libyschen Milizen. Seit 2020 sind staatliche Rettungsaktionen Maltas um 90% zurückgegangen, während bewaffnete Kräfte Flüchtende brutal zurück nach Libyen bringen, wo ihnen Haft, Folter und sogar der Tod drohen. Und auch die EU-Grenzschutzagentur Frontex agiert absolut kriminell. In tausenden Fällen übermittelt sie Koordinaten von Flüchtlingsbooten an die sogenannte libysche Küstenwache. Diese Einsätze führen regelmäßig zu völkerrechtswidrigen Rückführungen in Lager, die für schwerste Menschenrechtsverletzungen bekannt sind. Wir fordern eine klare Verurteilung der Pushbacks durch libysche und tunesische Akteure und der europäischen Beteiligung daran. Frontex darf keine Informationen weitergeben an diese Behörden, die an Folter und Menschenrechtsverletzungen beteiligt sind. Die Zusammenarbeit mit libyschen Behörden muss enden, solange Menschenrechte dort systematisch verletzt werden. Und darüber hinaus braucht es eine Umwandlung von Frontex in eine echte europäische Rettungsmission, einen wirksamen Überwachungsmechanismus gegen Pushbacks sowie eine EU-finanzierte Seenotrettungsmission und Straffreiheit für die Unterstützung von ziviler Seenotrettung. Europa muss endlich Verantwortung übernehmen. Ein Europa, das Menschenrechte ernst nimmt, darf beim Sterben im Mittelmeer nicht länger zusehen und muss aufhören, dieses zu befeuern. Vielen Dank.
Next speaker on behalf of the SOC group is Beyik Dennis. Was so good.
Thank you, Chair, dear colleagues. Thank you, Pablo Pisco, for the report. We talk a lot in this chamber about values, about human rights, dignity, and justice. But let me ask you honestly, what are those values worth if they don't apply to the mother drowning with her child outside of the coast of Lampedusa? People don't get on those boats because they want. They do it because they are a round of choices. No one risks everything for fun. They are escaping war, dictatorship, poverty, in many cases climate crisis. And yet we treat them as a problem to be managed, not the people to be protected. We know what international law says. We know what the European Convention on Human Rights says. We know what basic decency says. But somehow we still create a situation where helping someone in distress at sea is seen as controversial or even criminal. Let me be very clear. Saving lives is not a political act. It's a moral obligation. And we cannot accept a Europe where humanitarian NGOs are harassed, rescue ships are impounded, and governments quietly cooperate with the actors like Libya's Coast Guard, knowing well what's happened after the pushbacks. And let us be honest about one more thing. The idea that rescue operations are a pull factor is not just wrong, it's a convenient excuse. People don't flee because they heard that there is a boat. They flee because they are desperate. And as long as we ignore that, people will keep dying. So what we do? We re-establish large-scale search and rescue operations with the proper European coordination and funding. We stop criminalization NGOs and start to recognize them as the partners. We end funding and cooperation with actors who are systematically violate human rights. And we open safe legal pathways because the best way to fight smugglers is to make smugglers irrelevant. I don't came to the politics to look away when people drown. No one of us did, I hope. This report gives us a path forward, but reports don't save lives. Action does. So let us stop debating whatever people deserve dignity. Let's act like a European we say we believe in. Thank you.
And next speaker on behalf of the EPP, Mrs. Albana Vokshi.
Dear Chair, dear colleagues, I rise today with both conviction and deep personal understanding of this crisis. The report before us is a powerful reminder. Many routes migrants use to arrive in Europe, the Mediterranean and other sea routes have become deadly paths. Since 2014, thousands of migrants have died at sea. The Adriana shipwreck in June 2023, where 600 people perished, was not an exception. It was the result of systemic failure. Large-scale search and rescue missions were dismantled and replaced with border control operations, as the report mentions. NGOs trying to save lives were criminalized, obstructed, and fined. Over 80 legal cases have been launched in 5 countries. Meanwhile, Europe has outsourced a responsibility to actors like Libyan and Tunisian coast guards, despite overwhelming allegations of torture, rape, slavery, and pushbacks. The report mentions that even Frontex has been accused of delaying Mayday alerts and sharing migrants' boats, locations, and abusive militias. We are witnessing the collapse of our legal and moral responsibilities. Coming from Albania, a country of millions of migrants, especially after the fall of the communism, I feel and I understand this very big issue. In 1990s, thousands of Albanians fled on old, overcrowded ships, risking their lives across the Adriatic. And in the recent years, small boats towards the UK have replaced them. People paying smugglers thousands of euros, the saving of their lives, escaping corruption, poverty, discrimination, and hopelessness. Today, more Albanians are fleeing than countries in conflict zones. So I know what it means to leave everything behind, to risk the lives of children and mothers, not for luxury, but for survival. And they will not stop, no matter how high the walls, because they have lost faith that things will change. If one path is closed, they will use other riskier paths. That's why we have to react. Now is the time. But not all migration is natural and spontaneous. There is also artificial migration, forced migration, used by authoritarian regimes like Belarus and Russia to destabilize Europe's borders, using human suffering as a geopolitical tool. We must not confuse those fleeing for survival with those being used as instrumental of pressure. A well-coordinated effort is needed, legally, instrumentally, and not leave those people alone. Migration can be managed, but only if it is grounded in solidarity, legality, and humanity. Europe must not let its sea become graveyards. Let us act before more lives are lost. Thank you.
And then on behalf of the ECPA, Sir Edward Lake.
Madam President, I'm a sailor. I know the English Channel well. It's very dangerous. We've always had a precious principle, sailors, in international law for centuries, that if somebody is in distress at sea, you pick them up. I support that. But because we've been very weak over this issue, people are dying every year because they're attempting to cross the channel. And this report is not the answer. If this report was adopted, more and more people would make these hugely dangerous journeys. More and more people would die. And who would be enriched? Horrible people smugglers, gangsters, who are making tens of millions of pounds out of human misery. I mean, I've seen a video of the Royal Marines practicing in Portsmouth Harbour. It would have been perfectly possible on day one that these people attempted to cross the channel to pick them up safely and take them back to France. There would have been a row, I know, but it would have solved the problem immediately. And then we tried, the only solution, frankly, is that you have to, the moment they land in a country, you have to deport them to a safe location, a third country, where their asylum claims can be considered. But of course, these are not 99% of them genuine asylum seekers. They are perfectly good people. They are young men. They want to improve their life chances. And England is a draw, and maybe we're at fault of not having national identity cards or liberal employment laws. Maybe we're at fault because we speak English and they want to come to England. But the fact is, you will never stop the people smugglers. You will never stop this misery. You will never stop people dying unless you push people back, take them aboard and take them back from where they've come from, or deport them to a third country where you can consider their asylum claims. The principle of non-refoulement is frankly ridiculous. And I say to this Assembly that the Conservative Party in England is on the very verge of getting out of the Convention of Human Rights and this Assembly, because the whole political system in Britain is breaking down because of lack of trust because people see on their 10 o'clock news every night the gendarmes of the French coast just watching as these people illegally pour across the channel. And I'm sure it's a principle in other nations. Frankly, the report is vague and dangerous. The proposal to label European waters humanitarian status is just ridiculous. We should reject this report. We should actually do what we have to do to save lives. And we should have a principle, yes, that when people cross illegally from one European country to another, and they're perfectly safe in France, we can send them straight back to where they came, a third country. So reject this report and be sensible and stop these illegal migrations and stop these people smugglers. Thank you.
That concluded the round of the political groups. The speech is on behalf, and now we go to the list of speakers. And the better do you respect the speaking time, 3 minutes, the more we can have the speakers. So we will start with the ALDE Nerea Ahedo.
Will speak in Spanish. Hay personas que huyen de conflictos bélicos, de pobreza, de persecución y se tiran al mar esperando conseguir una vida mejor, pero no siempre lo consiguen porque nuestros mares a día de hoy se han convertido en grandes cementerios. Según la Organización Internacional para Migraciones, al menos 25.500 personas han muerto en la última década en el Mediterráneo. Pero según la ONG Caminando sin Fronteras, solo en 2024, 10.457 migrantes murieron intentando llegar a España, un 58 más que el año anterior, y de ellos el 93% murieron en la ruta atlántica, la más peligrosa. Podríamos sumar las víctimas en el Canal de la Mancha. Según la Comisión Española de Ayuda al Refugiado, se pierden 9 vidas al día. Y esto es solo el mínimo estimado, porque de muchos no hay constancia y es difícil recuperar cuerpos y datos. Hay organizaciones especializadas que calculan que solo se contabiliza 1 de cada 3 muertos. Y el objetivo que nos debería impulsar sería salvar vidas, aunque a veces parece que el objetivo real es impedir de cualquier manera la llegada de migrantes a las costas europeas. Y así somos testigos de actuaciones de guardas costeras, algunas europeas, otras de otros países pagados, con devoluciones en caliente con violentos incidentes, olvidando totalmente la dignidad humana y los derechos humanos. Así que parece más que lógico lo que propone el informe, que es reconsiderar la colaboración con la Guardia Costera libia o los guardacostas tunecinos. Y también somos testigos en ocasiones de la actuación de Frontex, que hay veces que actúa como cómplice. Vemos también, por otro lado, a organizaciones, a ONGs, a voluntarios de rescate marítimo que han rescatado más de 175.000 personas en los 10 últimos años, a las que en ocasiones se les impide su trabajo, se les deniegan permisos, se les incautan buques, se les criminaliza acusándoles de tráfico de personas y de esta manera las mafias se convierten en una excusa contra el auxilio. Oímos cómo Alemania, ayer mismo, suspende la financiación a estas organizaciones. De 21 barcos que trabajan en el Mediterráneo, 10 son alemanes. Y esto nos parece más que preocupante. Lo mismo que nos parece preocupante la falta de corresponsabilidad de los diferentes países que no son costeros. Asistimos también, en otros casos, a la denegación de acceso a puertos, poniendo vidas en peligro. Voy a acabar. Auxiliar a cualquier persona en el mar es un deber amparado en el derecho marítimo, pero sobre todo es una obligación ética y humanitaria. Y finalizo ya agradeciéndole al ponente, al señor Pisco, por este informe, pero no solo por este informe, que por supuesto vamos a apoyar, sino por todo el trabajo desarrollado en estos años en el Consejo. Paulo, gracias y te echaremos de menos.
And the next speaker is Saskia Kluit.
Thank you very much, Speaker. To my honourable colleague on the other side, I don't think you will ever stop people who want to look for peace and happiness in their lives. We have thousands of years of history of people migrating from one place to the other for looking for a better condition. And so if you want to do something about that, the solution can never ever be to let them drown on the sea. it is very important that we see the people who travel still as people. They are normal people, families who bring their lives, the lives of their children, their lives of their parents at stake to look for happiness and peace. And we must do all that we can to prevent them from drowning in terrible conditions. And not only for the people themselves, but also for our own people on the continent. The people who find the bodies on the shores and do everything to give them dignity in their death. But also the fishermen who hear the calls and try to reach out to people and save them, and yet are not allowed or able to do so. That is a terrible moral problem we lay down with the people who work at the sea. So what must we do? We must make sure that there's better coordination between the NGOs who try to save lives at sea, the national coast guards, and Frontex. They need to be well coordinated. They need to work together to save as many lives as possible at sea. Of course, smugglers need to be punished for the acts of putting people in danger, but that is not the reason why you should criminalize NGOs who try to save lives. It is not very difficult to distinguish between the two things. The rescue operations that we make should be strong, they should be decisive, and as many lives should be possible. And that will not be possible if we not start investing more and equip the coast guards for their work. They need to be able to communicate better. They need to have enough personnel to save people. They need to have the competences and the knowledge to interact with different cultures to help people. And I think the report of Paulo is really, really great and necessary if we look from a human rights perspective to the lives and migration of people at sea. So Paulo, thank you very much. I will miss you very much in our committee and SOC group.
And next speaker is Alain Cadec. Absent. Then we go for Victoria Diblom.
Thank you, Madam President, honourable colleagues. The tragic loss of life in the Mediterranean is something none of us can accept. But we must dare to ask difficult questions. Why are so many risking their lives at sea in the first place? Europe's current approach, built around rescue operations and relocation, has had the unintended effect of encouraging dangerous journeys. Human traffickers thrive on the assumption that Europe will receive all who attempt the crossing. This system, however well-intentioned, is unsustainable and deeply flawed. We must look to models that work. Australia, for example, has taken a firm stance. No one who arrives illegally by boat is settled on the mainland. The result? Smugglers lost their business model. Most importantly, people stopped drowning. If we want to truly save lives and protect human dignity, we must break the link between irregular sea crossings and access to asylum in Europe. That means stopping the boats, dismantling the trafficking networks, and reinforcing external border protection. At the same time, we can support genuine refugees through controlled resettlement programs from safe zones, not from smugglers' dinghies. Let us be clear. Protecting lives and upholding human rights does not mean accepting chaos. It means restoring order. And I agree with Sir Edward Lee, we need to reject this report. Thank you.
Next speaker is Gala Veldoen.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues. First, I want to thank my dear colleague and friend, Mr. Paulo Piscu, for this important report. His work is meaningful to me. As someone who is half Dutch and half Vietnamese Somalian, and whose family members came to Europe as refugees in the 70s, I know that behind every statistic is a story, a person, a family, a life full of hope and fear. Without the solidarity and protection they received back then, we would not be the beautiful and strong family that contributes to our societies today. And I want to emphasize that we contribute to the society. I strongly support the report's central message. Saving lives at sea is not a political decision. It's a legal and moral obligation. It pains me to see that today people in search of safety are too often treated not as human beings in need of protection, but as threats to be deterred, pushed back, or ignored. Mr. Piško's report clearly shows that in the name of so-called border protection, some member states are choosing to ignore their legal international responsibilities. Even worse, they enable or even participate in actions that lead to unnecessary suffering and death. The criminalization of the NGOs that carry out life-saving search and rescue work is especially disturbing. These organizations are not driven by politics, but by the simple belief that no one should be left to drown. They are doing the work that some states have shamefully abandoned. They should be celebrated and supported, not punished. Today, further conflict in the Middle East once again risks displacing countless people. Western nations, including ours, have repeatedly intervened in this region. When our actions contribute to instability and suffering, we have a responsibility to not abandon those who flee it. That's a matter of accountability and of conscience. Finally, this report is a reminder that migration is a structural reality of our time. People said it before me. We need legal, safe, and dignified pathways for migration. By creating these pathways, we will not only save lives, we will also undermine the criminal networks of smugglers that profit from despair. We call on all member states to act with urgency and compassion. We must rise to this challenge not as isolated nations, but as Europe that stands by its values. And this report is a firm step in this direction. And once again, I thank Paolo for his report, and he will be missed. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Georgios Stamatis.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to speak in Greek. Κυρίες και κύριοι συνάδελφοι, πριν πολλά χρόνια η κοινωνία των εθνών αποφάσισε να χωρίσει σε κράτη την Αφρική. Και δεν ρώτησε κανέναν από την Αφρική. Όταν έγινε αυτή η μεγάλη σύνοδος και φτιαχτήκαν τα σύνορα της Αφρικής, κανένας από την Αφρική δεν ήταν σε αυτή τη σύνοδο. Άρα τους φτιάξαμε κράτη χωρίς να τους ρωτήσουμε. Κάποια χρόνια πριν και μετά, κάποιες ευρωπαϊκές χώρες είχαν αποικίες σε όλο τον κόσμο και στην Αφρική. Ούτε τους ρωτήσανε αν θέλουν να είναι υποξένη κατοχή. Και μετά από πολλά χρόνια, τα τελευταία χρόνια που περάσανε, γίνανε διάφορες επαναστάσεις. Την ώρα που αυτές οι επαναστάσεις γίνανε σε χώρες που είχαν δικτατορία. Και εμείς, οι χώρες μας, η Ευρώπη, συνεργαζόταν με αυτές τις χώρες. Ούτε πάλι ρώτησαν εμάς. Ένας μετανάστης και ένας πρόσφυγας, ο οποίος είναι στη θάλασσα, γιατί έρχεται στην Ευρώπη? Γιατί έχουμε φτιάξει έναν χώρο στην Ήπειρό μας με δημοκρατία και ελευθερία. Αυτό είναι το καλό σενάριο. Γιατί όμως έρχονται? Γιατί στις χώρες τους δεν υπάρχει δημοκρατία, γιατί στις χώρες τους γίνεται εμπόριο όπλων και γιατί, να πούμε και την αλήθεια, οι διακινητές στις περισσότερες χώρες συνεργάζονται με τις κυβερνήσεις. Οι κυβερνήσεις αυτών των χωρών δίνουν το δικαίωμα στους διακινητές να έρθουν στην Ευρώπη. Χαιρετίζω αυτή την έκθεση, η οποία δεν είναι προς σωστή κατεύθυνση, είναι ένα βήμα και ένα άλμα προς τη δημοκρατία. Δεν μπορεί και δεν πρέπει να επιτρέπουμε να πνίγονται άνθρωποι, παιδιά στη θάλασσα. Και όχι μόνο αυτό, Αν ψάξουμε να δούμε τα στατιστικά στοιχεία, υπάρχουν και χιλιάδες άνθρωποι οι οποίοι δεν έχουν βρεθεί. Υπάρχουν άνθρωποι μετανάστες στο βυθό της Μεσογείου που ακόμα οι άνθρωποι που τους χάσανε περιμένουν κάποια στιγμή να πάρουν μια ένδειξη και να αναγνωριστούν και επισήμως ότι έχουν φύγει από τη ζωή. Η Ευρώπη είναι η δημοκρατία και η Ευρώπη πρέπει να συμπορευτεί με τις χώρες αυτές, να τις βοηθήσει, να τις αναπτύξει, να τους δώσει τη δύναμη της δημοκρατίας, ώστε αυτοί οι άνθρωποι να έρχονται μέσω νόμιμων οδών. Η ασφαλής οδός είναι το νούμερο 1 για να καταπολεμήσουμε τη διακίνηση. Και ταυτόχρονα να μην συνεργαζόμαστε με κράτη τα οποία βοηθούν τους διακινητές. Ο μετανάστης δεν μπορεί να είναι ο καλός όταν είναι μέσω μιας αποικίας ή ο κακός όταν είναι από μια χώρα η οποία έχει εμφύλιο. Ο μετανάστης είναι άνθρωπος όπως είμαστε κι εμείς. Σας ευχαριστώ.
And the next speaker is Laszlo Torocsai. Absent. And then we go to Francesco Verducci.
Presidente, sono di queste ore le immagini terribili di corpi senza vita che galleggiano nelle acque a largo della Libia senza che nessuno, e non le milizie libiche che noi finanziamo, li abbia recuperati. Dall'inizio dell'anno sono più di 500 le persone morte nel Mediterraneo, dal 2014 sono oltre 31.000, tantissime sono bambine e bambini. L'umanità è morta innumerevoli volte nelle acque europee. Penso che ogni volta che pronunciamo la parola migrante come fosse uguale alle altre, quando invece non lo è, noi abbiamo il dovere di avere consapevolezza di tutto questo, e questo è il principale merito del rapporto redatto da Paolo Pisco. Non chiudere gli occhi di fronte all'enormità della strage in atto. Questo è il punto politico, non assoggettare i diritti umani e il principio di non discriminazione su cui si basa tutto il nostro costituzionalismo alle esigenze del realismo, dei presunti interessi nazionali o al cinismo di uno strumentale consenso elettorale. Io ho rispetto per il disorientamento di tanti di fronte ai fenomeni migratori, ma non ho rispetto per i cattivi politici che lucrano sulla paura, creando ad arte mostri e capri espiatori. La migrazione è un fatto strutturale, globale, e va governata, non può essere rimossa, nasce da storture e disparità feroci del modello di sviluppo e come tale ci riguarda. Salvare ogni vita in mare è un obbligo giuridico e morale, e aggiungo politico. Le ONG svolgono un ruolo importantissimo colmando un vuoto, e dobbiamo ringraziarle perché tengono alto il nome dell'umanità e dell'Europa. Presidente, dobbiamo rilanciare la necessità di una missione stabile europea sul modello di Mare Nostrum. Soprattutto, colleghi, dobbiamo fare in modo che questo documento non diventi carta straccia e che a pochi passi da qui Commissione europea, Consiglio europeo e anche il Parlamento europeo non continuino ad avallare politiche di deportazione, di esternalizzazione delle frontiere, di respingimenti, di costruzione di centri lager. L'Europa dimostri di essere all'altezza dei suoi valori, che sono la sua forza. Questa Assemblea chieda con nettezza che ogni Stato membro del Consiglio d'Europa dica no al rinnovo degli accordi con la Libia, che sono stati un'ignominia e lo sono tuttora, e che hanno causato e causano tuttora crimini sistematici contro i migranti, contro l'umanità, e sono una delle pagine più oscure della storia dei Paesi europei. Grazie, Presidenti.
Next speaker is Boriana Obert.
Dear colleagues, a great part of the blame of the tragedies at sea rests with the current asylum system. It is a system that is both inhumane and unsustainable, and primarily benefits migrant smugglers. Migrant smuggling, which profits from people's hope of a better life in Europe, is run by the same criminal cartels that traffic drugs, weapons, and oil. In effect, the asylum system fuels these cartels. Unfortunately, these criminals are expecting and counting on the sea rescue operations, and therefore are using unseaworthy vessels at dangerous routes in severe weather. The road to hell is paved with the good intentions, and it is hell these desperate people are subjected to, crammed together in minimal spaces without food or water. The asylum system is effectively directly discriminatory. It is not those with the great needs, but instead young, healthy men with the means to pay the smugglers. Women are underrepresented despite being more vulnerable. If the claim is to act humanely, it contradicts the reality that the fittest are prioritized. A new system with asylum centers outside Europe needs to be established. Another issue is whether it really is Europe's responsibility to solve the migration issues of other continents. Is there any kind of limit at all on the number of migrants from Asia and Africa who can enter Europe? In Sweden, we have bitter experience with uncontrolled migration, which has resulted in parallel societies and criminality that are directly destructive to society. We also know that migration flows have been orchestrated by Russia as a form of hybrid warfare aimed at destabilizing Europe and its nations.
The next speaker is Luz Martínez Sello.
Gracias, presidenta. Comienzo mi intervención con mi felicitación personal al señor Pisco por este informe tan oportuno y necesario en un momento en que el discurso de odio contra los migrantes invade la esfera política, se llena de bulos y hace perder toda la sensibilidad y humanidad que debe caracterizar nuestras sociedades. Así que muchas gracias por traer el lado humano al debate de la migración, que espero y deseo pueda tocar el lado humano de los radicales y contrarios a cualquier tipo de migración. No todos los países afrontamos esta situación, pero la realidad es que la crisis humanitaria en las aguas europeas ha alcanzado niveles alarmantes. Mi país, España, como uno de los principales puntos de entrada para los migrantes, juega un papel crucial en la respuesta a esta emergencia. La ruta del Atlántico hacia las Islas Canarias se ha convertido en una de las más peligrosas del mundo, con un aumento significativo en las llegadas irregulares y un trágico número de muertes. En este contexto, es imperativo que los Estados miembros adopten medidas urgentes y coordinadas para salvar vidas y proteger los derechos humanos de los migrantes. España, a través de la Sociedad de Salvamento y Seguridad Marítima en Canarias, ha demostrado un compromiso inquebrantable en la misión de rescatar migrantes en peligro. Pero no es suficiente. Es necesario y urgente restablecer operaciones de búsqueda y rescate a gran escala en Europa, con la creación de un cuerpo europeo de búsqueda y rescate en el mar, cuyo único mandato sea salvar vidas, en pleno respeto de los derechos humanos internacionales. Este esfuerzo colectivo no solo salvará vidas, sino que también reafirmará el compromiso de Europa con los principios humanitarios. En este objetivo, la coordinación entre los Estados miembros y las ONG es fundamental para garantizar que las operaciones de rescate sean eficientes y efectivas. Es importante también reducir los obstáculos legales y administrativos que dificultan a las ONG sus operaciones de rescate. No se puede consentir la incautación de buques de rescate o iniciar procedimientos penales contra el personal de las ONG. Estas medidas no solo son contraproducentes, sino que también ponen en riesgo vidas humanas. Humanidad, señorías. para garantizar que los migrantes rescatados sean desembarcados de manera segura en el lugar más cercano, donde su seguridad no esté amenazada y sus necesidades básicas sean satisfechas. Estas medidas no solo son un imperativo moral, sino también una obligación legal bajo las convenciones internacionales. La atención a la salud mental y física de los migrantes es algo esencial para su recuperación y su reintegración. En resumen, la crisis en las aguas europeas requiere una respuesta coordinada y urgente para la prevención de más tragedias y la protección de derechos fundamentales de los migrantes. Señor Pisco, comparto su visión y las propuestas de este informe para que todos los Estados miembros asuman su responsabilidad y actúen con determinación y humanidad para salvar vidas y proteger los derechos humanos en nuestras aguas. Juntos podemos construir una Europa que sea un faro de esperanza y humanidad para aquellos que buscan seguridad y una vida mejor. Pablo, te echaremos mucho de menos. Muchas gracias.
And next one is Sandra Zampa.
...168 morti migranti, era l'ottobre 2013. Fu così che trovò impulso la missione umanitaria Mare Nostrum. 368 morti annegati a 2 passi da Lampedusa. Lo straordinario impegno a cui diedero vita le forze armate italiane, i volontari italiani, hanno impedito il ripetersi di quel dramma enorme e hanno strappato all'annegamento centinaia di vite umane. Lampedusa fu il punto profetico dal quale cominciò il suo magistero Papa Francesco. Lo scelse per mandare un messaggio al mondo intero. Ma poi, dopo Lampedusa, dopo quei salvataggi, dopo Mare Nostrum, le stesse voci che avevano giudicato inaccettabile l'immagine di quelle bare, piccole e grandi bare, nell'hangar dell'aeroporto, cominciarono a cambiare idea e a sostenere che Mare Nostrum era la causa dei flussi migratori verso l'Italia e verso l'Europa e che proprio per la sua esistenza arrivavano e aumentavano i flussi. Sono passati molti anni da allora. I flussi sono continuamente aumentati. Mare Nostrum è stata cancellata ed è stata cancellata perché si vuole continuare a chiudere gli occhi di fronte al fatto che i flussi migratori del Mediterraneo sono figli dello sconvolgimento di molti paesi del Nord Africa, del Medio Oriente, della Libia, della Siria, e invece che fare cambiare idea all'Unione Europea, chiedendo più responsabilità e più solidarietà, noi continuiamo ad accettare che possano continuare i naufragi e i morti in mare. La soluzione non può passare dal lasciare che nuove persone, nuovi bambini, nuove donne, nuovi uomini continuano ad annegare in mare. Occorre che l'Europa faccia finalmente la propria parte e questa parte si nutre di 2 parole: responsabilità e solidarietà. Ci vuole la forza di dare risposte politiche a in realtà un fenomeno che è strutturale, che è quello della migrazione. Siamo stati tutti migranti, siamo tutti figli di migranti. Abbiamo attraversato, i nostri nonni, i nostri bisnonni hanno attraversato il mare e attraversato paesi. Siamo, per fortuna, diversi e questo ci rende più ricchi. Siamo popoli che sanno esprimere e portano con sé tanta storia. Così deve essere, responsabilità e solidarietà.
Next speaker is Lacroix Christophe.
Merci Madame la Présidente, mes chers collègues. Je tenais tout d'abord à remercier très chaleureusement le rapporteur de cette mission, le collègue Paolo Pisco, qui nous rappelle à notre première mission. Ici, à quoi servons-nous? Eh bien, nous servons à garantir le respect de la dignité humaine et à protéger la sacralité. Oui, la sacralité, je n'hésite pas à utiliser ce mot, la sacralité des droits humains. Depuis plus d'une décennie maintenant, des images effroyables sont ancrées dans nos mémoires. Ces images, ce sont celles des corps, par milliers, échoués, noyés, des corps abandonnés à leur sort au beau milieu de la mer Méditerranée, dont le bleu s'est taché de ces corps pour des siècles et des siècles. Ces corps, c'étaient des individus, avant tout, des êtres humains comme vous et moi, mais qui n'avaient plus de choix, qui n'avaient plus d'autre choix que de risquer leur propre vie pour espérer la sauver, et qui, par milliers, en ce compris des enfants, des petits-enfants, ont payé ces traversées désespérées, ils l'ont payé de leur vie. Nous ne pouvons plus continuer à ignorer cette tragédie et à vouloir ériger des murs ou à vouloir faire de l'Europe une forteresse inexpugnable. Ce qui compte ici et maintenant, c'est d'avoir le courage audacieux et l'ambition noble de cette résolution. Nous devons dès lors permettre l'organisation d'opérations de sauvetage à grande échelle en vertu du principe de non-refoulement et des droits fondamentaux. Nous devons soutenir les ONG qui se battent pour secourir et prendre en charge les personnes qui migrent jusqu'à nos côtes, d'autant plus que nos États ont l'obligation de porter assistance à toute personne en détresse, car le droit à la vie, mes chers collègues, ne s'arrête pas aux frontières maritimes. Il nous faut aussi nous assurer que nos partenariats avec les pays de départ soient suspendus en cas de violation des droits humains, comme une documentation fournie le prouve déjà dans le cas de la Libye. Et nous devons aussi assumer collectivement la charge de l'accueil entre tous les pays européens. Une Europe des valeurs est une Europe qui est solidaire et qui apporte une contribution juste et équilibrée pour soulager ensemble la détresse humaine et offrir un avenir à ces peuples laissés pour compte, à ces peuples broyés par les guerres, broyés par les famines, broyés par les répressions et par le viol des droits humains fondamentaux. Je soutiens donc vivement cette résolution profondément humaniste et aussi responsable, qui reconnaît et qui valorise le travail précieux des ONG et qui permet de construire des voies de migration sûres et dignes. Merci Paolo.
And then final speaker from the list, Mrs. Mira Nieminen.
Thank you, Madam President. Migrant tragedies at sea are humanitarian catastrophes. We must help those in distress, that is clear. At the same time, we must be honest about what works and what does not, and what causes more harm than good, both for the migrants and for the receiving countries. In 2023, over 2,000 people died trying to cross the Mediterranean. This is a horrific number, but it highlights the flaws of the current system. The sea has become a highway for human smuggling via illegal routes operated by international criminal networks. Not under the rules of international law, but under the terms of economic exploitation and organized crime. This draft resolution, although we intentionally risk sending the message that Europe is accessible by exploiting loopholes in the system. Such a message might encourage departures and increase the risk that more people will fall victim to criminal networks and become part of these statistics. Let's be clear, illegal entry into Europe is not allowed.
No one should be left to die at sea, but rescue cannot mean the right to stay. It should mean return to the nearest safe country or the region of departure. The majority of these people are not refugees or defined by international law, but economic migrants. Europe cannot carry the weight of the world's problems. We have a responsibility our own citizens of their welfare and our security. Large and uncontrolled migration causes harm in Europe. Insecurity, cultural tensions, segregation, but also radicalization and crimes. We must not close our eyes to this. Instead, we should support countries to origin so that people have fewer reasons to leave. Effectively combat human smuggling and cooperation with EU and local authorities, and develop a return policy that is functional and clear. The future of Europe cannot be built on uncontrolled immigration. It must be built on stability, security, and responsibility. Thank you.
So that concludes the list of speakers now. And as I had to interrupt the list, the speeches of members that speakers were on the speakers list and who have been present during the debate must and have not had able to speak may be given to the table office for the publication the speech. I remind colleagues that typewritten text can be submitted electronically if possible no later than 4 hours after the list of speakers is interrupted. And now I call Rapporteur, Mr. Pisco, to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank all the interventions that have been made in this plenary, and including all those that do not present any answers to this dramatic situation, and they don't have an approach which could be called as a human approach to the situation. I think that if we could stop wars and repression and climate change and poverty, migrations will diminish. They will never stop, because since the beginning of the humanity, migrations is part of our identity, of our culture. We are not, any of us, we are not pure citizens. We don't belong to any of pure race or whatsoever that someone could think. I think that we have, as someone said here, that we have the legal and moral obligation of not closing our eyes. And the models that are put here forward by some of the colleagues, like the one of Australia, is based on illegal action of pushbacks. Pushbacks are not ridiculous. Pushbacks is something that are illegal on the international law, and this principle must be fully respected because it is one of the cornerstones of the international law. And the question is, when we just stop the boats and send them away, the possibilities of people still dying are very, very big, as happened, including in Australia, in so many cases. And this report is not a dangerous report, as I heard here. I can't understand why someone can say that is a dangerous report when is the objective is to save lives of people. Can you integrate that saving lives is not dangerous? Is our basic principle of humanity towards people that are in totally distress, and these things will not stop. So we have to do something. We have to do something, and we have to manage. That does not mean that we are not going to manage migration. Migration should be managed, of course, and should be controlled. Of course, we are all agree on that. But the question is, we have to use a totally different model, which could be more human and with more capacities to do what is right for those people which are seeking our countries. And because our countries are needing of all those people for work because of labor shortage, because of the demographic decline, because of the sustainability of social security. So it's a big paradox that you use that argument and in reality you don't give any answer to this dramatic situation. So, dear colleagues, my main appeal is countries need to respect international law. If international law is respected, many people's and lives could be saved. Thank you so much.
Now I ask if the chairperson of the committee, Mr. Koncharenko, wants to speak for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, dear Chair. I want to tell you that we see that it is a very important issue. There is a lot of debate, there are different views, and that's why we exist, to debate and to find right solutions. Now I am expressing position of my committee as a chairperson of Migration Committee. And I need to inform you that this report was adopted unanimously at the April meeting of the committee, as well as the preliminary draft resolution and recommendation. But first, I just want to thank Mr. Pisco for all his long-standing job here in the Assembly. Unfortunately, that's the last day for the moment for Mr. Pisco to work this session but I want to thank him. I worked with him for several years in the committee and for several years here in the Assembly. And we can agree on something or disagree, but he is a man of sincerity and values, and I appreciate and value this. And on behalf of Commission on Migration, I want to thank you for your job in the Commission as well as in the Assembly. We're speaking about a very important issue because this is about human lives. And the rapporteur underlined the importance of the international and regional instruments, primarily the European Convention on Human Rights, which safeguards the right to life in its Article 2. Also in the report it is consolidated by the case law of the European Court of Human Rights, including obligation to take appropriate steps to safeguard the lives of those within their jurisdiction and in the context of any activity. We just need to remember that it's not a matter of origin, nationality, or any other argument. It's a matter of humanity. So we have the necessity to save people first. And I think this is not discussed and this is not doubted by anybody here in this Assembly. And this is a very important point which unites us despite of different political views on the question of migration. But we all agree that we need to protect lives and save people, also to save people in the seas. As national parliamentarians and responsible national lawmakers and members of the Assembly, we need to act not only on European level, but on the level of national parliaments. And this is very important. I want us not to forget that whatever we will discuss here, whatever resolution we will make here, in reality it will come only when we will make serious steps and courageous steps and important steps in our own national parliaments. So, finalizing, once again, our committee adopted unanimously this report, and because of this, I want to ask all of you to support this report on behalf of Committee on Migration. And once again, congratulations to Mr. Pisco for the all job he's done, and to Secretariat for all job they did. Thank you very much.
The debate is closed. Now I also inform you that the Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons has presented a draft resolution and recommendation to which no amendments have been tabled. So we will proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 1619.5. A simple majority is required. Point of order. Please.
According to Article 42.3, I challenge the quorum. Pursuant to Article 42.2, I request the verification of the quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. The Secretariat will look for the figures.
Mr. His name, please. There is a request. Just say there is a request.
Yeah. So there is a request to ascertain a number of members present. If a quorum is not present, the vote of the business before the Assembly will be postponed. I need to know if the request is supported by at least 1/6 of the representative authorized to vote, that is 49 members, and at least 5 national delegations. So, is there the people to request to support the quorum? (49) is it?
Yes. Wait. Okay, there is not enough allotment.
So we all see that the figure 49 members is not met, so requirement to call the quorum is not met. We therefore return to the main, to the voting procedures. So we are ready to vote. May I ask the voting to be opened? You don't see how many have been voted no?
Sorry, wait.
There we go. Yeah.
You can close the vote. It's not problem.
And the vote is closed. I call the result to be displayed. Thank you. Point of order.
Un chiarimento. Dovevano essere presenti 1/6 dei presenti per la votazione valida o 1/6 dell'assemblea intera?
Dei membri
presenti?
Of the members of the assembly, 1/6 of the members of the assembly.
No, the present. 6 of the present members, of course.
Yes, I said the wrong figures. It was not 49 members, but 1/6 of the representatives authorized to vote. And now we saw that there were 78 who vote and only 15 people stand. So
It's the number of the representatives of the assembly, no matter how many they vote.
okay,
The number of the representatives authorized to vote.
Okay,
in
no.
general.
Okay.
Please repeat.
Yes. So I read it from here. So it's 1/6 of the representative authorized to vote.
The whole assembly.
And not vote here. That's how the rule 42 you referred to is saying.
Let's continue. Please continue.
Okay. So I call the result was displayed, and I can now say that the report is adopted.
Now draft recommendation.
And then we still have another vote, that is the vote on the draft recommendation, and 2/3 majority is required, counting only affirmative and negative votes. So we will proceed to vote on the draft recommendation contained in the document 16/19/5. I remind you, 2/3 majority is required now for the draft recommendations. Vote, is that clear? Vote is now open for the recommendations.
Now, this is what I prepared for this.
So I close the vote and ask the result to be displayed.
It's not adopted.
These figures show that not 2/3 of the votes have been accepted, so the recommendations are not adopted. You can say that. Then let me have a word to Mr. Pisku. You have worked here in a member of PACE since 2017, and you have not only worked on the on the importance of the human rights of the migration management, but also denounced the forcible transfer and Russification of the Ukrainian children, saying it shows evidence of genocide. It shows that this report on deported and forcible transfer of Ukrainian children, following a debate in which Mrs. Zelenskaya participated online, that set the basis also for the network of situation of children of Ukraine that we see is working importantly. And after the historical night last night with Zelensky here as well, I will thank you for your work on the PACE and good continuation on your life. Thank you. We now also changed the chair for the session.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the next item of business this is the debate on the report titled The Challenges and Needs of Public and Private Actors Involved in Migration Management, is document number 16192 and should be presented by Ms. Sandra Sampa on behalf of the Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons. We will check how many time that we have. We have now 5 speakers on behalf of the political groups and 8 on behalf of the speakers list. We're already a little bit in delay, but we will manage it. So, Mr. Sandra Sampa, you have now 7 minutes, and then at the end you have another 3 minutes to reply to the debate. You have the floor, Mr. Sampa.
Grazie Presidente, thank you Mr. President. Siamo tutti consapevoli.
May I ask to be quiet, please, at the corner over there, and to sit down. If you want to have a little chat, it's possible. There's a bar outside, there's a terrace outside, you can do everything outside what you want, but here, as a sign of respect, please be quiet and respectful for everyone. So be seated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cari colleghi, siamo tutti consapevoli della sfida che la gestione dei flussi migratori pone e di quanto sia complesso affrontare questo tema nel rispetto delle convenzioni internazionali, isolandolo dai tentativi di strumentalizzarlo nel dibattito pubblico per lo scontro politico. Proprio a partire da questo ho voluto affrontare un aspetto specifico e molto concreto dell'ambito migratorio. Analizzare e comprendere il ruolo e le esigenze di tutti gli attori pubblici e privati che quotidianamente si confrontano con la gestione dei flussi migratori, svolgendo ognuno il proprio compito. Con lo stesso spirito ho rivolto attenzione alle buone prassi messe in atto nei diversi Stati membri del Consiglio d'Europa, al fine di presentare proposte costruttive ed efficaci. Innanzitutto, chi sono questi attori? Gli attori pubblici coinvolti nella gestione della migrazione sono le autorità pubbliche nazionali e locali, le amministrazioni, le agenzie internazionali che si occupano di migranti, richiedenti asilo e rifugiati, rispetto all'arrivo, alla prima assistenza e all'accoglienza nel sistema istituzionale, nonché di quanto avviene nelle situazioni informali ai margini dei nostri territori. Per quanto riguarda gli attori privati, sono 2 le tipologie: enti privati che hanno contratti con le autorità pubbliche e per gestire o cogestire le strutture nelle diverse fasi del sistema di accoglienza. Ci sono attori privati come enti di tutela, fondazioni, organizzazioni non governative che lavorano in stretta collaborazione con il settore pubblico. Le interazioni tra tutti questi attori sono inevitabilmente complesse, ma abbiamo verificato possono portare a risultati positivi che è importante far conoscere e diffondere. Ci siamo concentrati sulla prima assistenza all'arrivo, l'accoglienza di chi fa richiesta di protezione internazionale, con l'esistenza di eventuali percorsi dedicati per persone vulnerabili, minori non accompagnati, persone vittime di tratta, inclusione sociale e lavorativa per le persone che ottengono la protezione internazionale. Occorre ribadire quindi che stiamo parlando di un segmento della popolazione migratoria, e cioè richiedenti asilo, rifugiati, persone vulnerabili, anche se inevitabilmente in questi mesi ci siamo imbattuti anche in persone che restano fuori dal sistema, in condizioni precarie e spesso estremamente gravi. Numerose sono le informazioni raccolte in questi mesi di lavoro, 3 visite conoscitive in 3 Stati membri, Francia, Italia, Regno Unito. Abbiamo potuto osservare da vicino situazioni diverse tra loro, incrociando tuttavia questioni che non riguardano esclusivamente questi 3 contesti geografici, ma contribuiscono a disegnare un quadro più generale, con dinamiche comuni che si osservano lungo le varie rotte migratorie in Europa e alle frontiere dell'Europa. Il rapporto rivolge un chiaro invito agli Stati membri a garantire procedure rispettose dei diritti umani, stabilendo standard minimi per un'assistenza e un'accoglienza dignitosa, con particolare attenzione alle persone vulnerabili, alle donne, ai bambini, ai minori non accompagnati e alle vittime di tratta, che sono davvero il più precario e delicato partecipanti di questi flussi migratori. Sappiamo bene quanto siano numerose anche in Europa le situazioni critiche rispetto a come queste persone vengono trattate, in particolare nelle zone di confine. Le verifiche hanno confermato quanto sia importante intervenire sui tempi per l'esame delle domande d'asilo, che sono ovunque troppo lunghi. Le persone, singoli o famiglie, restano in un limbo nei centri dove spesso le condizioni di vita non sono dignitose e i servizi forniti sono minimi, senza formazione al lavoro o altro. Senza una preparazione sufficiente all'autonomia e all'inclusione, una volta ottenuto lo status, si esce dal sistema e si è costretti però a rivolgersi di nuovo al sostegno di associazioni e organizzazioni per sopravvivere, perché non si è stati preparati. Il momento della transizione dall'accoglienza all'inserimento nella comunità risulta quello più critico e spesso determina situazioni di estrema precarietà. Nella bozza di risoluzione faccio riferimento all'importanza di coinvolgere le autorità locali e le diverse realtà del territorio, servizi sociali, scuole, biblioteche, associazioni, nei percorsi di accoglienza e inclusione dei rifugiati, che solo così riescono a raggiungere una propria indipendenza ed entrano a far parte della comunità. Ciò significa evitare di ricorrere a strutture di accoglienza su larga scala e dare priorità a strutture più piccole, alloggi dignitosi diffusi su tutto il territorio nazionale. Non bisogna concentrarsi in alcune aree specifiche, nelle grandi città, coinvolgendo le autorità locali invece nella programmazione degli interventi. Oltre alle criticità, il rapporto indica diversi casi di buone prassi che consentono di garantire l'inclusione dei rifugiati e dei richiedenti asilo nelle comunità ospitanti, grazie a una sinergia tra i diversi attori. Le pratiche di accoglienza inclusive nei centri SAI in Sicilia e iniziative come il Trinity Homeless Project del Regno Unito sono modelli esemplari che promuovono la comprensione reciproca tra i diversi attori, lo sviluppo locale e un'integrazione riuscita. Una riflessione va fatta anche rispetto a tutti coloro che restano esclusi dal sistema di accoglienza e vivono in insediamenti informali, presenti in tanti, se non in tutti i nostri stati e non solo a Calais. Oltre alla mancanza di beni e servizi di prima necessità, sono continui i rischi per la salute e la sicurezza. Queste persone non hanno accesso affettivo ai loro diritti fondamentali e spesso diventano vittime nuovamente di sfruttamento a vari livelli. Infine, lasciatemi ricordare un tema che mi sta molto a cuore: i minori stranieri non accompagnati, più vulnerabili. Eppure per loro occorre prima di tutto assumere, fare riferimento a raccomandazioni che già il Consiglio d'Europa ha emanato e dare priorità alla presunzione di minore età. In ultimo ringrazio il segretariato della Commissione Migrazione e quello della delegazione italiana per il supporto attento e competente che hanno riservato a questo rapporto e alla mia persona.
Mille grazie, Ms. Zampa. Now in the debate I call first Emmanuel Fernandez from France, from the UEL. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, le rapport qui nous est présenté, et mon groupe salue le travail de la rapporteure Sandra Zampa, dresse un constat clair. La gestion des conditions d'accueil des personnes migrantes en Europe bafoue bien trop souvent les droits fondamentaux des personnes exilées. Il est urgent d'agir pour faire respecter les droits des personnes en situation de migration partout au sein des États membres de notre institution. Ce rapport souligne à juste titre l'importance d'un accueil digne, conforme aux droits humains. Avec mon groupe de la gauche unitaire européenne, parmi les recommandations du rapport, nous soutenons notamment celles qui appellent à veiller à ce que les normes minimales soient établies en accordant une attention particulière aux personnes vulnérables, en particulier les femmes et mineurs non accompagnés, et garantissant que ces personnes vulnérables aient un accès à des structures d'accueil dédiées. En effet, nous savons à quel point, en plus de la violence de l'exil et du parcours migratoire, les femmes et les mineurs non accompagnés sont exposés à des risques accrus lors de leur parcours migratoire, violences sexistes et sexuelles, traite ou encore torture. Cette vulnérabilité accrue impose des obligations renforcées de protection que les États doivent impérativement assumer. Ce rapport insiste sur la nécessité de renforcer la coopération entre acteurs publics et privés. Nous y souscrivons pleinement et j'ai pu constater ce besoin aux côtés notamment de Mme Zampa lors de notre déplacement avec d'autres collègues à Calais, déplacement dont les conclusions alimentent ce rapport. Et j'en profite pour saluer ici le travail inestimable des fondations, des associations, parfois des collectifs citoyens qui œuvrent pour la dignité et même trop souvent pour la survie des personnes migrantes. Cependant, comment coopérer efficacement quand l'État lui-même se retire ? En France, nous assistons à un désengagement progressif de l'État qui diminue les subventions aux associations et aux acteurs de terrain. Ce sont pourtant eux qui, au quotidien, garantissent ce que l'État ne garantit plus, l'effectivité des droits fondamentaux. Si les associations et les ONG sont si présentes dans les lieux d'accueil, les campements ou les hébergements d'urgence, c'est bien parce que l'État ne remplit plus ses responsabilités. Ce n'est pas à la société civile de pallier les carences publiques, ce n'est pas aux associations de garantir les droits fondamentaux. En principe, c'est à l'État de le faire. Le fait de garantir l'effectivité des droits humains pour toutes et tous n'est ni une option, ni une variable d'ajustement budgétaire. C'est une obligation aussi bien légale que morale. Le rapport pointe les atteintes aux droits au logement pour les personnes demandant la protection internationale. À Strasbourg, ces atteintes sont quotidiennes. De nombreuses et nombreux demandeurs et demandeuses d'asile dorment dans la rue, faute de place dans les centres d'accueil et les structures d'hébergement d'urgence. Des tentes s'installent, des campements se forment et l'État continue de fermer des places et de réduire le nombre de logements disponibles. J'achève en disant que c'est une réalité évidemment indigne que nous ne pouvons ignorer. Nos États doivent prendre leurs responsabilités. Ce que nous devons aux personnes exilées, ce n'est pas la charité, mais la justice. Elles ne doivent pas être vouées à la précarité, mais avoir accès, comme tout un chacun, à la dignité. Ce n'est pas un privilège, mais un droit. Ces droits humains universels que notre institution est chargée de protéger et promouvoir. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Monsieur Fernandez. Maintenant, je donne la parole à Monsieur Frides de la groupe politique socialiste. Vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Mesdames, Messieurs, chers collègues, on a coutume de dire qu'une démocratie se juge à la façon dont elle traite les plus humbles, les plus fragiles, les plus démunis. Et les personnes migrantes appartiennent sans nul doute à cette catégorie. Durant les 10 années passées au sein de la Commission des migrations, j'en aurais vu des situations difficiles. La misère absolue des vies totalement dépendantes de l'aide extérieure. La jungle de Calais, les camps de réfugiés à Lesbos, en Bosnie-Herzégovine ou encore en Jordanie, des lieux d'accueil pour mineurs non accompagnés en Grèce et bien d'autres endroits où j'ai pu observer l'importance de l'aide apportée sous différentes formes aux personnes migrantes, tout particulièrement aux personnes fragiles et vulnérables. Venus du bout du monde, ayant fui la guerre, les persécutions, les conséquences du dérangement climatique, la misère et la faim, les migrants, souvent au péril de leur vie, ont traversé les mers, gravi des montagnes, franchi les murs établis pour empêcher leur passage, pour finalement parvenir en Europe. Chers collègues, imaginez-vous débarquer dans un pays inconnu, épuisé et démuni, sans argent, parfois sans papier, ne parlant pas ou mal la langue du pays, tiraillé par la faim et la soif, transi de froid ou accablé par la chaleur, ne vous rappelant plus exactement de votre dernier vrai repas ou de votre dernière douche, les pieds en sang d'avoir trop marché, les souliers et habits usagés et troués, agrippés à votre modeste bagage, la peur au ventre face à l'insécurité, aux risques encourus et à la menace constante d'être contrôlé, éventuellement arrêté et expulsé, et souvent désespérément à la recherche d'un être cher, disparu lors du périple. Je viens juste de décrire le quotidien d'un migrant, d'un réfugié ayant été contraint d'utiliser une voie irrégulière pour entrer dans l'un de nos pays, souvent la seule voie possible. Que deviendraient ces gens, ces damnés de la terre, sans une aide leur permettant de survivre ? Les besoins sont énormes, les ressources souvent limitées, et on constate une charge très inégalement répartie, reposant très largement sur les épaules des pays d'arrivée. Je pense à la Grèce, l'Italie, Malte ou encore l'Espagne, sans oublier les plus de 3 millions de migrants vivant en Turquie. La solidarité de nombre de pays européens reste insuffisante. L'origine de l'aide apportée aux migrants peut être publique ou privée, en règle générale les deux, dans un partage organisé des tâches pour les migrants qui sont rentrés dans le processus officiel du traitement de leur demande d'asile. Infrastructures, logements, nourriture, traduction, identification, procédures administratives, soins notamment psychologiques, soutien juridique, éducation pour les plus jeunes, apprentissage de la langue. Les travaux sont conséquents. Et les autorités de la plupart de nos États doivent largement se reposer sur des ONG auxquelles elles délèguent de grandes parties de ces missions. Mais nombre de migrants restent en dehors des circuits officiels et dépendent alors totalement de l'aide apportée par des ONG. Je m'en suis rendu compte dans la jungle de Calais et j'ai vu les plus misérables des misérables, soutenus tant bien que mal par les admirables bénévoles d'associations caritatives. Dans certains pays, ces ONG sont accusées de favoriser la migration illégale, voire criminalisée, assimilée à de vulgaires passeurs. C'est choquant. Merci à notre collègue Sandra Zampa d'avoir rappelé le rôle essentiel de toutes les personnes qui s'engagent pour apporter secours et humanité aux migrants. Je considère ce rapport comme un hommage à l'égard des ONG. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur Verdes. And I give now the floor to Mr. Carvalho from the political group EPP.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I speak today guided by the fundamental values of EPP. Speak for human rights, human dignity, solidarity, responsibility, and the rule of law. These principles must be at the core of Europe's response to migration. We can never be populist about the migration just to win votes and win elections in our countries. The migration challenge we face are not only humanitarian, but structural. They test our capacity to defend borders while remaining faithful to our European values. This report rightly underlines that migration cannot be managed effectively without strong cooperation between public institutions and private actors, NGOs, local authorities, civil society, and international agencies. I'm particularly proud of our Portuguese example, where a centre-right government signed an agreement with the major private sector representatives, including them in the public response to migration and labour market integration. As EPP representatives, we believe in subsidiarity and local empowerment. That's why we support integrated community-based reception models. Partnerships with local municipalities and trusted non-profit organizations have proven more effective in delivering human care, preventing segregation, and fostering real inclusion. At the same time, we must ensure security, order, and fairness. Border procedures must be efficient, but they must also be right-based. The identification of vulnerable individuals, women, children, trafficking victims cannot be rushed. We support age assessments and screening mechanisms that are multidisciplinarity, accurate, and children-sensitive in full compliance with international human rights standards. Above all, we must act together as Europeans. Migration is a European challenge that requires coordination and long-term solutions. We need stable funding, coherent policies, and stronger alignment between national and European frameworks. We need to lead with conviction and compassion. We need to deliver policies that are both fair and firm. We need stands for a Europe that protects its people, honors its values, and does not leave anyone behind. Congrats on your report, dear colleague. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carvalho. Now I give the floor to Mr. Ley from ECPA.
Mr. President, I acknowledge the report's intention to improve cooperation amongst public and private actors involved in migration management. Cooperation is valuable, but it cannot replace firm enforcement. The report underplays the need for robust measures to deter illegal crossings and disrupt smuggling networks. There is a noticeable lack of focus on deterrence strategies, without clear intentions to discourage dangerous journeys, more lives will be lost and put at risk in the Channel and in the Mediterranean. Return and readmission agreements are mentioned, but lack detailed proposals for strengthening these crucial tools. Effective returns are essential to prevent repeated illegal crossings. Border security receives limited attention in the report. We must invest more in surveillance, patrols, and early detection to prevent unauthorized entries, especially across the Channel. The report leans heavily on humanitarian approaches, but these risks creating incentives for more migrants to attempt hazardous crossings. Compassion, Mr. President, must be balanced with practical deterrence. While the report acknowledges the smuggling networks, it stops short of proposing concrete actions to dismantle these criminal operations that profit from human misery. The concept of safe third countries is discussed without clear criteria, leaving ambiguity about where migrants can be returned safely. Clear definitions are vital to ensure returns comply with international law and protect individuals from harm. Increased cooperation, European cooperation, is welcomed, of course, in principle, but it must not erode national sovereignty over border control and immigration decisions. The national governments of European countries must retain full authority over who enters their territory. That is a fundamental national right. Public perception and social cohesion receive inefficient consideration. Migration policies that ignore public concerns risk undermining trust and social harmony. This report does not go far enough, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ley. Then I give the floor to Mrs. Bilozier from ALDE Group.
Dear colleagues, Madam Rapporteur, this is important and human-based focused report. As Ukrainian, I understand displacement and migration not only as crisis, but as a test of humanity. We also understand the power of civil society and how essential it is to empower local actors, municipalities, NGOs with tools, funding, and recognition they need. Those who respond to the crisis are not always national governments, but often local communities, NGOs, and frontline service centers. Let me share a Ukrainian experience. First weeks of the full-fledged invasion, we had 6 million Ukrainians that became internally displaced. This was, I think, the fastest and largest displacement in modern European history. And before international aid came, it was Ukrainian civil society, municipalities, and even centers of provided administrative services that became the first line of humanitarian response. Local NGOs mobilized overnight. They provided food, clothing, advice, shelter. Centers of administrative services that before were to issue documents became emergency assistant hubs, issuing temporary IDP certificates, coordinated volunteers, providing medical help even, settling people in the houses of those who wanted in the local level, local people that proposed. Local schools, vocational dormitories, churches opened their doors. This experience taught us something vital. Successful migration management starts locally. It starts with trust, coordination, and courage to act fast under pressure. That's why, on behalf of ALDE, I would strongly support the report's recommendations, strengthen the role of local authorities and NGOs in reception and integration, invest in a smaller, dignified housing instead of over-reliance on hotels or mass shelters, and ensure funding to local communities and NGOs. The way Europe welcomed millions of Ukrainians refugees was remarkable. It showed that when political will and community compassion align, refuge can become renewal. This model of decentralized, human approach migration management must now be extended to all people fleeing war, persecution, or disaster, no matter where they come from. Let us not wait for the next emergency to apply these lessons. Let us act now with vision and solidarity. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Ms. Benazir. Then I go to the speakers list. The first one is Mr. Facenda from the Socialist Group. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the author, Ms. Sandra Zampa, for this important report. Migration management is a reality that demands cooperation, coordination, and clarity of roles. Public and private actors, from border authorities to local governments, NGOs, and to service providers, are on the front lines of a system that is under pressure. They face legal uncertainty, lack of resources, inconsistent policies, and at times even political hostility. Yet, their work is essential to ensure that migration is managed in a way that is safe, human, and sustainable. We must support these actors with proper funding, clear legal frameworks, and capacity-building tools. But more than that, we must foster trust between institutions, with civil society, and most importantly, with the migrants themselves. Migration is not a temporary emergency. It's a structural feature of our world. Managing it responsibly requires long-term vision and shared responsibility. Migration is not a crisis to be contained. It is a human reality to be managed with responsibility and solidarity. If we want a system that works, we need to invest in cooperation, capacity, and also compassion. In fact, migration management must never be done at the expense of human rights. This is not just about borders or numbers. It is about shared humanity. And also, this is not about privileges for migrants. People are simply asking for a chance to live with dignity and in peace. In fact, we don't need a world of individualism and indifference. We need a world of solidarity, hope, and humanism. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Facenda, and to be so beautiful in time. So I can give now the floor to Mr. Martel from the ECPA. You have the floor, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Jo, vielen Dank, Herr Präsident. Verehrte Kollegen, Migration ist eine Tatsache, die die Menschheitsgeschichte seit jeher begleitet. Trotz zuletzt fast 300.000 Einbürgerungen pro Jahr haben in Deutschland etwa 14 Millionen Menschen keinen deutschen Pass. Jährlich kommen bis zu 2,5 Millionen Menschen nach Deutschland. Und viele dieser Menschen kommen sogar ohne jeden Pass. In einer Welt, die zunehmend Bürokratie und Struktur geprägt ist, erscheint es absurd.
If you can repeat, we take the time again.
We take the time again because there was a problem with the translation. So you can restart.
Not understand.
Sie können erneuern,
Okay.
because there was
Thank you. Yeah.
ein Problem mit der Ersetzung.
Okay. Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, verehrte Kollegen, Migration ist eine Tatsache, die die Menschheitsgeschichte seit jeher begleitet. Trotz zuletzt fast 300.000 Einbürgerungen im Jahr haben in Deutschland über 14 Millionen Menschen keinen deutschen Pass. Jährlich kommen bis zu 2,5 Millionen Menschen nach Deutschland. Und viele dieser Menschen kommen sogar ganz ohne jeden Pass. In einer Welt, die zunehmend Bürokratie und Struktur geprägt ist, erscheint es absurd, wenn ausgerechnet die Migration ohne jegliche Kontrolle erfolgt. Jeder möchte wissen, wer in seinem eigenen Zuhause ist. Ebenso muss es Aufgabe eines jeden Staates sein, zu wissen, wer sich auf seinem Territorium aufhält. Strenge Kontrollen an Flughäfen zeigen den Wunsch nach Kontrolle. Doch gleichzeitig bleiben viele Außengrenzen unzureichend überwacht, was somit unlogisch ist. Unkontrollierte Migration führt zu einem Verlust der Kontrolle, was im Extremfall zum Zerfall ganzer Staaten und Gesellschaften nach sich ziehen kann. Ein Blick in die Geschichte mahnt uns, lassen wir uns von den Fehlern und untergegangenen Gesellschaften nicht erneut überlisten. Vielen Dank.
Danke, Herr Martel. Then I go to Mr. Lord German from the ALDE Group.
And I just like to say that I think I ought to stick to the report which is before us, rather than looking at very much wider issues, because there are some very significant matters inside this report which relate to the way in which public bodies and charities and NGOs operate together. Migration management is a very, very complex operation. It involves people at all levels of society, in lots of places and across whole countries. And the value of locking together the voluntary non-governmental bodies with the public bodies, the bodies who are paid by entirely and put in place by governments and local authorities, must be complementary. They must work together, because both provide essential services which are needed for a proper functioning migration system. We know, and we have heard in the report, that there are some unfortunate places where one side regards the other with great suspicion. And that is very unfortunate as well, because if these systems overlap or if they are contradictory, then they actually reduce the quality of the overall service which is being provided. So the obvious ways, as described in the report, is to deal with this, is that there should be formal talks, negotiations, and ways of working which are agreed both nationally and supranationally and locally, in order to make the maximum advantage that you can get from the huge added value which non-state bodies, charities and NGOs can bring. Some NGOs rely almost entirely for their funding on public bodies, but many balance that with private and philanthropic funds. And what this report calls for is smaller scale operations, moving things outwards and downwards to communities, dispersing people's help around each part of our member states. Because where NGOs are best suited to provide support is locally, and localized support is often related to the very important issue of housing. So breaking down the barriers between public and voluntary organizations can ensure that public spending will give the maximum return on this investment. So this Assembly, I think, should recognize that this report opens a way for ensuring that we all, citizens of all of our states, get more bang for our buck. In other words, we get better quality services from investing and supporting local community operations and voluntary bodies. It makes absolute sense to use and support NGOs in order to build better services to help the most vulnerable to live better lives.
Thank you, Lord German. And then I give the floor, and this will be then the last one, to Mr. Torskay. No, then give to Mrs. Bradley. This is the last one, then I will interrupt the list of speakers. You have the floor. 3 minutes. You have to push. You put your card in.
Try that one? Oh, hang on, it's working. There we go. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And as we would say in the UK Parliament, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. President. For the first time, I think, that I've served under your chairmanship. I, like my colleague Lord German, want to focus on the aspects of the report. And I want to start by saying that the opening paragraph, which states that, that we're convinced that cooperation with public and private actors is one of the crucial aspects of managing migration. I would go further and say it is essential. It is utterly impossible for the state alone to manage the accommodation for migrants and the management of migrants. The state might fund, but it cannot provide the accommodation, the food, the clothing, the emotional support that's needed, and other matters. So I would say that we go further and not just say it's crucial, but this is essential. And not just the private sector, but also the voluntary sector, NGOs, they're incredibly important in this process. Now, in the UK House of Commons, I chair the Home Affairs Select Committee, and in that capacity, we are currently carrying out an inquiry on the contractual arrangements that the UK government has with the providers of asylum accommodation in the UK. Now, our report is not finalised yet, and we are still working on it, so I can't talk about our findings, but I do think many of the things in this report in front of us today match things that we have found, but there are some slight differences I wish to point out. I'd also just want to make the point that we too often conflate the issues of people smuggling and human trafficking. This report does not do that. It is clear about trafficking being a separate issue. But smuggling is a consensual crime and trafficking is a coercive crime. And if somebody is forced to travel to another country, that is different from somebody who has chosen to take that path. And that is why it is incredibly important that we have quick decision-making in the process so that we can identify those that are genuine refugees, genuinely here in a country for escaping persecution, rather than those that wish for a better life. I don't blame those individuals for wishing for a better life, but I think that we do need to make a very quick decision. And we also need NGOs and other actors to be able to help to identify those people who are victims of trafficking. The other point that I just wanted to pick up was the point that's made in the report about the type of accommodation. And whilst I appreciate that there is a view globally that we should move to smaller scale dispersal rather than larger scale, in fact, what I have seen is that in a larger site, it is possible to provide more of the services that asylum seekers need. It is possible to have on-site decision-making, it's possible to have on-site medical support, it's possible to have on-site facilities that simply aren't possible in dispersal accommodation. And I would just ask us to think carefully about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. So I interrupt now the list of speakers, and the speech of members who has not presented here can always give it to the table office for publication and official report at the latest 4 hours after this debate. So I call now Mrs. Sandra Zampa as a rapporteur to reply, and you have 3 minutes. Max.
Presidente, grazie a chi è intervenuto, il dibattito è stato molto interessante. Approfitto di questa replica per ringraziare le organizzazioni non governative, le associazioni e la società civile che si mobilita e che collabora per la gestione dei flussi migratori. C'è una favola africana che racconta di un grande incendio nella foresta e degli animali che fuggono. Solo i colibrì restano e corrono avanti e indietro a prendere l'acqua col becco e portano il becco con l'acqua, riempito il becco, e la rovesciano sull'incendio. E un rinoceronte dice al colibrì: cosa pensi di fare in questo modo? E il colibrì risponde: io faccio la mia parte. Io voglio quindi ringraziare tutte le persone che fanno la propria parte, le persone di buona volontà, che insieme alle istituzioni, e noi dobbiamo fare in modo che le istituzioni mettano a disposizione l'acqua. Questo è il punto essenziale. Alle istituzioni va la responsabilità di organizzare insieme alla società civile l'impegno per favorire, per gestire con più intelligenza e razionalità i flussi migratori. Le buone prassi che abbiamo visto nei paesi che abbiamo visitato, ma che sono anche altrove, e ne ho conosciute tante altre, dimostrano che si può fare un uso intelligente delle politiche migratorie, che le politiche migratorie possono rispondere a molti bisogni delle società, e mi dispiace che ci sia chi non ha compreso nemmeno oggi e nemmeno di fronte a questo pragmatico rapporto qual è il ruolo del colibrì, che è quello di portare acqua, e qual è il ruolo delle istituzioni, che è quello di mettere a disposizione quell'acqua. Tutti insieme dobbiamo abituarci all'idea che i flussi migratori sono fenomeni strutturali, che la migrazione andrà gestita. Voglio ringraziare in particolare la collega Biluzir che è intervenuta, giusto per ricordare qui le donne ucraine che ho incontrato a Londra e che erano ospiti di una grande associazione, una grande ONG che abbiamo visitato e che ha il compito, con il sostegno delle istituzioni locali e nazionali, aveva proprio il compito di in qualche modo accompagnare la presenza dei migranti, di rendere più facile e più semplice non solo a loro la vita, ma anche alla società che li accoglie. Il ricordo di quella donna ucraina che era insieme a sua figlia non me lo dimenticherò nei prossimi anni. Grazie.
Mille grazie, Ms. Zampa. The chairperson of the committee, Mr. Goncharenko, you want to speak?
Yes,
Can you make it short because we are running time?
It's absolutely great. As I understand, Croatian foreign minister is already here, so we need to move forward, and I just want to be as short as possible. Our committee unanimously supported this report in May, so I ask everybody on behalf of Migration Committee to support the report, and I want to thank Madame Zampa and the Secretariat for great work done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the debate is closed. The Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons has presented the draft resolution to which no amendments have been tabled. We will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document number 6. Yes?
Scusi Presidente, sempre in riferimento all'articolo 42 del nostro regolamento, sottolineo quanto sia imbarazzante porre al voto risoluzioni, mozioni e progetti come questo di tale rilevanza con meno di un terzo dei parlamentari onorevoli presenti, e che quindi sarebbe opportuno rivedere perlomeno come viene considerato il numero legale per queste votazioni. Grazie.
Thank you. A request is made as a certain the number of members present. If a quorum is not present, the vote on the business before the Assembly will be postponed. I need to know if the request is supported by at least 1/6 of the representatives authorized to vote, and that is 49 members from at least 5 national delegations. So will those who wish to support the request please insert their voting cards and vote yes.
No, nostra, no, aspetta. Quella nostra e quella di loro.
And can we see the results?
We haven't voted yet. How can you see it?
Or you can also...
Yeah, or you can also raise.
It's easier.
If it's Can you just raise?
No, Presidente, non chiedevo la verifica del numero legale perché so che il regolamento così com'è non lo consente, non ci sono i numeri, però dicevo che è inopportuno, è inadeguato il sistema di valutazione previsto oggi dal regolamento.
This is not a point of order, and you take just the floor like that, so the translation is not okay, so we don't go to that point. So we will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 16192. A simple majority is required. The vote is now open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. 60, 66 approved, 14 against. So the draft resolution in document 16192 is adopted. Before we go to the next point, I'm very sorry I have to apologize, but we have a correction of the result announced at the end of the debate on the report on saving the lives of migrants at sea and protecting their human rights, presented by Mr. Pisco. This was document 16195. The automatic counting by the machine has only taken into account all persons who has their badge to vote. This means also the persons who has abstention. And the rule is that you need the 2/3 of the people who voted yes or no. So then, if you take yes or no, 70 has voted yes or no, 54 has voted yes. So this means that the 2/3 majority was approached. So these recommendations were also adopted. I'm very sorry for that. Very sorry that sometimes a machine, that human beings are sometimes even better than a machine. Thank you very much. I now you give the floor to the real president.
You are a real president.
Yeah.
So now we all understand why we should not trust AI. Dear colleagues, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, now I have the pleasure to welcome among us Mr. Gordan Grlić Radman, Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of Croatia. Dear Minister, you have held the position of Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs of Croatia since 2019, when you took over the role from Maria Pejcinović-Burić, when she became our Secretary General here at the Council of Europe. Before that, you have held a number of positions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Croatia and several diplomatic postings, including to Hungary, Bulgaria, and Germany. Dear Minister, next year, it will be 30 years since your country joined the Council of Europe. Since then, much progress has been made and there have been many changes to the political landscape in Europe. We look forward very much to your address and to hear your views on the current challenges facing our continent. Dear Minister, thank you for being with us today and for having kindly accepted to reply to questions from parliamentarians after your address. Without further ado, I have the honor to give you the floor.
Thank you so much, and Mr. President Agapite Theodoros, Mr. Secretary General, Cher Alan, lieber Alan, caro Alan. honorable members of the Parliamentary Assembly, Your Excellencies, the distinguished esteemed colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and I am always pleased to be here in this high house, keeper of our democracy, our values, human rights, and I feel here as at home. And I'm very proud to the fact that Mr. President, you mentioned that next year we will celebrate our 30 years of anniversary of our membership in this the very, very, very important organization. And thank you so much for the opportunity to address the distinguished Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. It is really a pleasure for me to address you in this remarkable institution, as I mentioned, a symbol of reconciliation and shared progress among the people of our continent, of our European continent. My presence here is a token, is a sign of Croatia's gratitude to the Council of Europe for its commitment to European unity and the defense of the core values that bind us together. This occasion also holds special meaning, and as we approach the 30th anniversary, as I mentioned, of Croatia membership in the Council of Europe next year. Last I was here, it was on the same day when we entered the Council of Europe on 6th of November. The new Democratic Pact for Europe represents a vital initiative launched by the Secretary General at the beginning of 2025, which we strongly support. Building upon the Reykjavik Foundation and the 10 principles of democracy, this pact addresses the critical challenges facing European democracy today. Democracy requires our vigilant protection against contemporary threats, namely democratic backsliding, socioeconomic inequalities, and technological disruption that amplifies divisions rather than fostering dialogue. Eroding trust in institutions and increasing polarization demand our urgent attention. We support the three-pillar approach. First, learning democracy through education. Second, protecting democracy by reinforcing constitutional safeguards and combating disinformation. Finally, and innovating democracy through new participatory governance models and digital transformation. This process, leading to a potential summit by end 2026, must remain inclusive, particularly engaging youth and civil society. We seek alliance beyond Europe, include with the Global South, to create a positive democratic narrative that delivers tangible improvements in citizens' well-being. Mr. President, Secretary General, dear colleagues, recent proposal to open-minded discussions about how international conventions address today's challenges, particularly regarding migration, require our captive attention and careful consideration of fundamental principles. We believe it may be helpful in this ongoing debate to consider the relationship between states' sovereign prerogative to create and amend international conventions on one hand, and the judiciary's interpretative role within existing frameworks on other. While the European Court of Human Rights exercises interpretative authority over the European Convention on Human Rights, there are legitimate discussions on the balance between judicial interpretation and states' democratic processes for modifying legal frameworks through their legislative institutions. Regarding the court's interpretative function, the Secretary General has noted the importance of institutional independence, stating the following: the court must not be weaponized, neither against governments, nor by them. Institutions that protect fundamental rights cannot bend to political cycles. If they do, we risk eroding the very stability they were built to ensure. At the same time, and that is important to mention, as stated by its former president, and not only once, the court is not living in an ivory tower. This simply means that the court should closely follow contemporary realities and should interpret the convention as a whole and its particular provisions accordingly. In short, the principle of separation of powers and their balancing remains fundamental to our democracies. It is their starting point and their beacon. Constructive debate strengthens our system, but at all times we should keep in mind basic principles of our democracies, and particularly the preservation of the independence of judicial institutions. Dear colleagues, I'd like to dedicate a few words to our immediate neighborhood, our Croatian immediate neighborhood, but however European neighborhood. It's Southeast Europe or Western Balkans. Probably Southeast Europe is a better explanation of geographical position of those countries who are so-called Western Balkans. Although Western Balkans is neither political nor geographically correct enough, but however it's in a political process. If there is Western Balkans, so we can ask where is the eastern part of the Balkans. So, Western Balkans. It's only political process. The Council of Europe provides an important platform for reaffirming Croatia's support to our neighbors in the Western Balkans in their reform processes and efforts on their EU integration path. Croatia is a staunch advocate of EU enlargement via vocal proponent and hopes to see progress on the EU path of the Western Balkan countries, but in line with the merit-based approach and individual achievements in meeting criteria. Like Croatia, so we work hard to fulfill all the necessary criteria and benchmarks. However, the hard work does pay off. More than 2 decades after the 2003 Thessaloniki summit reaffirmed the European perspective of the Western Balkans, it is evident that now is the time to move forward. Countries of the region should seize this positive momentum and use it as an impetus for further internal reforms to complete the process as soon as possible. And we are ready to help them. We have an expertise, we are experienced. And it's in our interest to have a stable institution, functional Western Balkans. Croatia therefore encourages all Western Balkan partners to intensify efforts in meeting the established criteria, particularly in the fundamental areas of democracy and the rule of law, which remain the cornerstones of the enlargement process. Addressing unresolved legacies of the past is also critical and necessary for reconciliation and long-term stability. Promoting the regional stability and good neighborly relations, it is overarching principles of the European Union, aligning with a common foreign and security policy, rule of law, and of course, sharing European values. We welcome, in this regard, we welcome the progress that Albania and Montenegro have made on their EU integration path in recent months. We encourage them, as well as other countries in the region, to stay focused on continue delivering. We put particular focus on Bosnia and Herzegovina, which deserves the attention of entire international community, given its history and the responsibility of us all to support the country's European reform agenda, assuring the equality of three constituent peoples, namely Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croats, and the rights of all citizens is crucial for their political stability and democratic consolidation of that country. Croatia is doing its part in helping the states of Southeast Europe on their Euro-Atlantic path. We are sharing our EU accession experience. We are twinning projects, technical cooperation, and bilateral support programs. Croatia fulfills all its the most important foreign policy goals. What remains? It's stability of the Western Balkans. Of course, we are on the way to achieve the membership of OECD, but it's on the track. I will later on mention on that. Since joining the EU, Croatia has implemented 49 twinning projects, 41 of them in the Western Balkans, and organized more than 1,000 educational activities with over 9,500 participants. According to the European Commission data, Croatia is one of the most active EU member states in implementing twinning projects in the Western Balkans region. As a candidate for the OECD membership and a responsible member of the EU, Croatia is firmly committed to fostering inclusive and sustainable development across Southeast Europe. We will continue offering political, diplomatic, and technical support to all Western Balkans partners, pursuing EU and, of course, some country, if they want, also the NATO membership. The Council of Europe remains a key international partner in strengthening democratic institutions, human rights, and the rule of law across the Western Balkans. It acts as a vital catalyst for countries on their path to European integration. And I express our gratitude to all what I'm doing, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, in your very important role here, your efforts, and which we are really supported strongly. Finally, Kosovo admission to the Council of Europe would, in our view, fulfill our organization's funding mission of promoting democracy, human rights, and the rule of law throughout Europe. In that sense, it represents both a strategic opportunity and an important step towards strengthening European values across the continent. Kosovo's admission would eliminate a significant gap in the Council of Europe's continental coverage, ensuring uniform European human rights standards across the Western Balkans. This inclusion would strengthen regional stability, support Kosovo's European integration, and provide all communities, including the Serbian minority, full access to the European human rights system. Ukraine. I take this opportunity to greet my friends from Ukraine. Yesterday's signing of the agreement between the Council of Europe and Ukraine on the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression and President Zelensky's address to this High House undoubtedly represent historic events, not only within this organization, but also much more broadly. My country, Croatia, is ready to do its part quickly and effectively in establishment of this agreement. The Russian war of aggression is the most serious threat to European peace and security in decades. This is not only a war against a sovereign state, it is a direct assault on the principles of international law and the rules-based global order. And as my Prime Minister Andrej Plenković said in Odessa, 2 weeks ago, Ukraine, so they're helping Ukraine. It's not only the act of our solidarity, so it's an investment in European security and international order based on rules order. This is not only a war against a sovereign state, it's a direct assault on the principles of international role and the rules-based global order. Should Ukraine fall? I hope not. But however, should Ukraine fall, the message to other autocratic regimes would be that wars of conquest and profitable. We remain deeply concerned by Russia's continued attacks on civilian infrastructure and its unwillingness to engage in credible peace efforts. Ukraine has clearly demonstrated its readiness to pursue a just and lasting peace, including by agreeing it on unconditional 30-day ceasefire to create space for diplomatic negotiations. In contrast, Russia shows no urgency or genuine will to end the war. A future peace agreement must not legitimize or reward Russia's illegal territorial gains. Any peace that is unjust would risk setting a troubling precedent, encouraging further acts of aggression and undermining stability in Europe and beyond. From our own experience, we know that only a peace rooted in justice can endure. We must keep doing everything we can to help Ukraine defend itself and pressure Russia into honest diplomacy. This entails additional military assistance to Ukraine and putting further strain on Russia through sanctions. Cooperation with the US remains crucial in this regard. The war in Ukraine is in many ways a reflection of our war of independence in Croatia, homeland war, during which Croatia faced many of the same horrors that Ukraine faces today: territorial aggression, war crimes, so-called denazification propaganda, attacks on civilian infrastructure representing breaches of international humanitarian law and human rights law. This is why we deeply understand Ukraine's struggle. Croatia has stood with Ukraine since the very first day of Russia's brutal aggression. Croatia has been with Ukraine since day one and will build with Ukraine in the future. Croatia remains committed to providing continued and comprehensive support to Ukraine, including steadfast support for Ukraine on its EU path. Croatia can offer first-hand experience to Ukraine, particularly in areas such as humanitarian demining, prosecution of war crimes, peaceful reintegration of occupied territories, and veteran cares. The project for the resocialization of Ukrainian veterans, carried out with the support of the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of Croatia, stands as one of the key efforts to share Croatia's post-war experience following the War of Independence. It is a testament to our commitment to solidarity, healing, and long-term peace building. This year, we are organizing the first international conference on comprehensive care for veterans of the war in Ukraine. Caring for veterans is a lasting responsibility, one that extends well beyond the end of conflict. This will be the fourth year in a row that Croatia has hosted a major international gathering with the aim of helping Ukraine. First, in 2022, first parliamentary summit of the International Crimea Platform, then 2023, International Donors Conference on Humanitarian Demining in Ukraine, 2024 Ukraine Southeast Europe Summit organized by our Prime Minister, an upcoming ministerial level dinner within this framework in Dubrovnik in this July. Relative to our GDP, we have provided substantial support, almost 350 million euros in total, including 77 million euros in humanitarian aid. We have also welcomed over 30,000 Ukrainian refugees since the start of the war. According to the Kiel Institute, it's May 2025 data, Croatia ranks 12th globally in total aid to Ukraine relative to GDP, 12th in military aid, and 6th in humanitarian aid, given the size of the country. In short, Croatia strongly supports and greatly values all the efforts undertaken under the auspices of our organization in support of Ukraine, first and foremost, those related to compensation of damages inflicted, but even more so those related to the establishment of responsibility and bringing to justice those responsible for major international crimes committed in and against Ukraine. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished colleagues. Middle East. Regarding the dire situation in Gaza, we welcome the newly achieved ceasefire. We call upon the release of all hostages, immediate, safe, and secure flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza must be established, and the relaunching of the political process to end the conflict and reach a lasting political solution. We continue to support a two-state solution as the only sustainable path that can bring peace, security, and prosperity to both Israel and Palestinians, as well as to the broader region. It must be the outcome of the peace process. In all conflicts, humanitarian law and principles should be respected and the civilians protected. We are deeply troubled by the devastating number of women and children that have lost their lives in Gaza. Croatia had sent urgent humanitarian assistance for the civilians in Gaza on several occasions, with an emphasis on helping children. In our war of independence in the 90s, we faced a tragic experience of children losing their lives for bombing and shelling. This painful fact is one of the reasons why Croatia is particularly sympathetic towards similar sufferings and tragedies in other conflicts, and that solidarity is deep and sincere. Just a few weeks ago, the Croatian government sent an urgent humanitarian assistance for children in Gaza amounting to 1 million euros via UNICEF. We continue exploring ways to offer additional help to the youngest ones in Gaza in the nearest future. Dear colleagues, dear friends, in the time ahead of us, we should do our utmost to save the lives of the most innocent ones in every society or community, especially in catastrophes and conflicts, the lives of children. To date, Croatia has provided 2.75 million euros in urgent humanitarian assistance to civilian population in Gaza. We delivered 400 tons of wheat flour to the Egyptian Red Crescent. Since 2016, Croatia has implemented health and education projects in Syria and in the neighboring countries worth 1.2 million euros. Croatia is keeping its commitment to the people of Syria with 600,000 euros in the period 25-27. In 2025, we will implement projects focusing on education and healthcare infrastructure for civilian children in Jordan and Lebanon. Just recently, we have allocated additionally €500,000 in humanitarian assistance for civilian population in Syria. Croatia expressed its solidarity with Lebanon by providing €350,000 in urgent humanitarian aid in 2024. We provided support for socio-economic empowerment of Syrian women, education of Syrian children in Lebanon, worth €500,000 in total. The Croatian government also contributed to the reconstruction efforts after the devastating explosion in Beirut. In Jordan, we reconstructed 5 inclusive playgrounds in refugee camps and conducted healthcare projects for Syrian refugees. Croatia is firmly committed to peace, coexistence, and helping those in need. This is why we are supporting the revitalization of our community center in Bethlehem with €500,000. I had the honor to witness the start of works on the center, which will provide safe space for children, youth, and families affected by conflict. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, dear colleagues, distinguished friends, transatlantic relations are very important. Having touched upon some of tumultuous events around the globe, I believe it is worthwhile to remember that Europe can rely on and be relied upon by our partners across the Atlantic. Transatlantic cooperation has for decades been a cornerstone of global security, stability, and economic development. This commitment transcends changes in administration on both sides. I just came from Hague, where we have an historic summit, and this summit came at a crucial time for Euro-Atlantic security, and so the allies. So we showed our unity and our strength. The NATO is the most strongest alliance in the world. However, we are committed to a collective defense outlined in Article 5. First of all, we have to increase our budgets to adopt new technologies and expand also military production. So security is very important for us, having in mind the situation that security threats are growing, are very serious, from Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine and daily hybrid and cyber attacks. Croatia views the Atlantic relationship as vital, not only to its national interests, but also to addressing global challenges through coordinated and principled action. We believe that active US engagement in international organization and forums is vital for upholding a rules-based international order that protects democratic values and human rights globally. Cooperation and coordination with the US are particularly important to our neighboring region of the Western Balkans, for example. The security and stability of the countries in the region is a shared priority for all of us. I believe we can agree that in the absence of negotiated solution, US tariffs impact not only the transatlantic partnership but also global trade, particularly supply chains and capital markets. Therefore, we consider it essential to de-escalate current tensions and pursue a mutually beneficial trade agreement. Historical experience has confirmed that by working together, the EU and the US can overcome existing challenges and reaffirm their leadership in global trade, innovation, and economic stability. Croatia, both bilaterally and as an EU member, remains fully committed to these ties. By deepening engagement with our American partners, we strengthened the resilience of this essential partnership, ensuring shared prosperity and stability for the future. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, esteemed colleagues, we must also address a different type of crisis Europe is facing, namely the migration crisis. Our specific geographical position at the crossroads of Central, Southeast Europe and the Mediterranean puts us directly on the main migratory routes. Therefore, it is clear why Croatia is committed to ensuring safe yet legal paths for migrants. Croatia is not only protecting the national borders, but also protecting the European borders. Having in mind that Croatia entered Schengen as of 1st January 2023. We are obliged to. Croatia values strategic partnerships with various organizations on all aspects of migrations and mobility, including displacement of people and responding to their humanitarian needs. Only with the positive impact of safe, orderly, and regular migration can countries of origin, transit, and destination provide the protection of migrants and their human rights. On the other hand, we must focus on the fight against irregular and illegal migration, as well as fight against criminal organizations and traffickers. Croatia is diligent in active implementation of the common EU migration policies, including on international protection. We are aware that asylum seekers' treatment and proportion of positive asylum decisions greatly vary among member states. For this reason, some asylum seekers try to illegally reach those countries where they will have a better chance of obtaining international protection. That puts pressure on the EU's external borders, particularly Croatia, as I mentioned, which has the longest external and land border among the EU members. We remain vigilant in safeguarding human rights at our borders, mindful of our responsibility to balance security with compassion and legality. Dear friends, media freedom. Allow me now to turn to another issue central to our democratic values, so freedom of media. Here again, the Council of Europe plays a pivotal role. Its strong legal standards help member states uphold press freedom and protect those who hold power to account. Freedom of expression is one of the key elements for the progress of society. Yet, we all see that the independent media remain under pressure today. Journalists face threats all over the world on an almost daily basis. Different forms of violence against journalists have increased significantly, from physical attacks to intimidation and harassment, targeted surveillance and cyberbullying. Digital technology is creating new threats. They range from online attacks against journalists or to orchestrated online disinformation campaigns and dissemination of news with no public accountability and little transparency. This proliferation of false narrative by various factors, including national governments, is especially atrocious for the overall safety of every society. Yet, it is constantly on the rise, especially in times of various global conflicts and challenges. Being Fully aware of these challenges, Croatia is pleased to emphasize that we are a signatory to various international treaties and recommendations on the freedom of expression and media freedom. We are continuously improving our normative framework to ensure that higher standards for all media operating in Croatia. Without safeguards for the safety of journalists, there can be no free media. Without free media, human rights and democracy are in peril. No community, country or region can prosper if media freedom is denied. We have a collective responsibility and a moral duty to preserve freedom of media. In the words of Benjamin Franklin, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. Conclusion, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, dear colleagues, distinguished members of the Assembly. As I conclude my remarks today, let me emphasize that the challenges we face, from the assault on democracy, rule of law, to conflict that threaten our shared security, to the protection of fundamental human rights, demand our unwavering unity and collective action. The Council of Europe stands as Europe's conscience, reminding us that our strength lies not in our individual capacities, but in our shared commitment to the values that define us: democracy, human rights, and rule of law. Croatia's journey from war-torn nation to proud member of the European family demonstrates that with determination, solidarity, and adherence to our common principles, even the most daunting challenges can be overcome. A man asked his gardener, "Why do your plants grow so beautifully?" The gardener replied, "I don't force them to grow. I just remove what stops them." So, please remove all the obstacles so that everyone feels at home. Today, as Ukraine fights for these very same principles, to feel at home, their own home, as our Western Balkans neighbors pursue their European path, and as we confront crises from Gaza to our own borders, we must remember that our response will define not only our present, but the Europe we leave to future generations. Let us leave Strasbourg more determined than ever to defend democracy, where it is under threat, to extend the hand of solidarity to those who suffer, and to ensure that the beacon of European values continue to shine brightly in an increasingly uncertain world. The war begins anew today, together, united, and resolute. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Minister. Dear Minister, dear colleagues, we have to conclude this sitting in 8 minutes. So I will change a bit the procedure. Actually, what we're doing, Mr. Minister, is we have questions one by one on behalf of political groups. But I will ask kindly to the representatives of the political groups to address the questions one after the other, and then please keep some notes so to have some minutes to answer to all of them. You can stay there if you want, or you can go to whatever you want. You can stay or you can go to the seat, where is more convenient for you. I will start with the speaker on behalf of the Socialists, Greens and Democrats, Mrs. Bisera Konstantinovska Stoyevska. Bisera, you have the floor. Bisera, have you pressed the button? Have you inserted your badge? No. Is this the right button there, or is maybe the button on the right? Becerra, do you mind to give the floor to Ingrid Skau and then you come back to you? Ingrid?
Okay, yes. Oh, here.
Okay, sorry. So we can hear.
Yes, I'm sorry. Respected Minister, before joining the EU, Croatia had to resolve a border dispute with Slovenia. What did you learn from that process, and how would you apply those lessons to the blockage that Bulgaria is imposing on North Macedonia due to the constitutional amendment on the Bulgarian minority? Do you see room for Croatia, maybe together with Slovenia, to take on an intermediary role in facilitating the Skopje-Sofia dialogue, similar to what the Brdo-Briuni process did for regional cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you, Becerra. On behalf of the European People's Party, Madame Ingrid Skau. Ingrid.
Thank you, President. And Bosnia-Herzegovina, neighbors to Croatia, the current political situation has been described as a gridlock and the most difficult since the signing of the Dayton Accords in 1995. What is your assessment of the situation, and can Croatia, as an EU member state, contribute to the European integration process of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and what role can the Council of Europe play? Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. On behalf of the European Conservatives, Patriots and Affiliates, Oleksiy Goncharenko. Mr. Goncharenko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Minister, for support to Ukraine. And in this January, Ukraine and Croatia signed and started the special task force against Russian so-called shadow fleet. Can you inform us what are the current results of this task force? And by the way, 1 month ago, it was the second Black Sea Security Forum in Odessa, where the question of maritime security was one of the most important. So I would like to invite you for the next year forum, which already proved itself to be a very important regional platform for such cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleksiy. On behalf of the Liberal Democrats, Sabina Kudis.
Do we hear? Mm-hmm. Welcome to Strasbourg, dear Minister. You spoke at length about your relationship, or Croatia's relationship, with the Western Balkans. My question pertains to Croatia's support or lack of support for the implementation of European Court of Human Rights judgments concerning Bosnia and Herzegovina. Recently, you made a statement: if Bosnia wants to join the EU, it better listen what Croatia has to say. In that regard, my question is, does the same apply for all Western Balkan countries, and whether you will use Croatia's foreign policy goals to condition membership of Western Balkan countries to the EU? Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina. And on behalf of the United European Left, the co-chair of the group, Laura Castel.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Minister, thank you for being with us. We know Croatia is facing several issues that deserve our attention, such as judicial independence, in particular to protect whistleblowers and journalists investigating corruption, or even the pushbacks at the borders, but also whether Chapter 31 of Montenegro's accession, which is common foreign and security policy, could be opened tomorrow, or Croatia will block it. So, dear Minister, we appreciate if you would elaborate to all of us these issues. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Laura. Dear Minister, you have the floor to respond.
Thank you so much for this question. I appreciate it very much. Yes, and first of all, it was the Croatia and Slovenia. I know very much on our neighborhood, and together with Slovenia, we entered the European Union. First of all, Slovenia entered before Croatia did. And I can say that Slovenia helped our accession to the European Union. But however, I'd like to answer you briefly and so properly. We, through our accession process and prior to it, we have repeatedly expressed our readiness to resolve the open border issue with Slovenia before the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea as the most competent body for solving similar disputes, as well as before the International Court of Justice. Just this history of this file, the border issue. In order to remove hindrances and to complete its accession to the EU, Croatia did accept the Slovenian proposal to submit this issue for settlement before the ad hoc arbitral tribunal under the bilateral arbitration agreement concluded between two states, namely Croatia and Slovenia. As you all know, it did not get very well since the process was compromised and contaminated in a way that stand ready to resolve dispute with our neighbor, because we honestly believe that all open issues should be dealt with through dialogue. The fact that our cooperation is very good and vibrant in so many areas, by also Prime Minister 2 days ago emphasized that fact during the recent meeting. We have a lot of things in our own interest. It is strengthening, for example, the common traffic infrastructure. In the interest of our citizens, we are now together in the Schengen zone. I think the political, of course, efforts needs to be made first of all, and the issue that can be also resolved later need to be overcome, and we are a good example for that. Yeah. So I can say that since we have also very good and friendly relations with both countries, also the North Macedonia and Bulgaria, we are good friends. We would also be ready to act as an honest broker if both Bulgaria and North Macedonia would deem it as a potentially useful. And that was the question of the distinguished parliamentarian from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Actually, I never, it was misinterpreted that, you know, just never, someone wants to find something and the sentence of the war to disqualify someone who is setting very positively. I spoke on a positively manner. Namely, what I wanted to say that Croatia is a member of EU, and so in this regard, that Croatia is ready and to help, to assist Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's in Croatia who is vocal proponent of the EU perspective of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's now our interest to have Bosnia and Herzegovina, because we are closest neighbors. We share common history, and it is Croatia who actively was engaged, first of all, for Bosnia and Herzegovina to get the candidate status in December 2022. Now we also helped in this processes of negotiation with European Union. Just what we need, there is a negotiation framework. What we need, the substance of the framework substance of negotiations. I think there are some law required on the ground, and hopefully Bosnia and Herzegovina will soon negotiate with the European Union. But now it's up to political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina to engage themselves really in the interest of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The responsibilities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and their leaders. So who more than Croatia knows the history of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Me too, I was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina. My whole family is born, and I like Bosnia and Herzegovina. I appreciate very much also my connection with Minister of Foreign Affairs Konakovic. We always organize the Dubrovnik Forum where we attended, and we organized the panel where they participate the foreign ministers of the Western Balkans. And of course, when it comes to the Dayton Agreement, so we should know that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a multinational state. It's a multi-ethnic miniature. The principles of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Dayton Agreement, the principles, they are one country, two entities, and three constituent peoples with a system of checks and balances. It's power sharing. And this Dayton Agreement was designed just not to prevent any domination of other ethnic group. So it is the question. So every constituent people should have equal rights. And it's Croatia who is helping, of course, to all the political leaders, no matter who are. And we are interested in having a political stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We appreciate and territory and integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Croatia was among the first to recognize Bosnia and Herzegovina on 7th of April 1992. So we are honest broker, we are honest friend. I think so it must be visible and concrete proved. Montenegro, it's not the chapter 23 or 24, and you know that Croatia supported European and NATO perspective from the very beginning. And it was Croatia who, during EU presidency in 2020, on the end of June, I was then also at the time foreign minister, we opened the last chapter, namely competitiveness. And we also closed recently in three chapters, and now we also closed the chapter 5. But 31st, it is 31st chapter. It's good neighborly relations. Good neighborly relations. It must proved concretely. It's not blocked. So we give chance to Montenegro. Good neighborly relations, promoting regional stability, and good neighborly relations is overarching principle of European Union. Overarching principle of European Union. And we called also to refrain from any activities that can undermine good neighborly relations. I recently also visited Montenegro, and we signed with Foreign Minister Ibrahimovic and a very important agreement. It's a good step forward, return of the Roma to Croatian minority in Boka Kotorska, in Montenegro. I visited also my colleague in Belgrade. I visited my colleague in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have a good communication to everyone. But however, as I mentioned, Croatia fulfill all its foreign policy goals. Croatia doesn't need anything. What we need is stability and of Western Balkans. And so when it comes to shadow fleet, so also we discussed it also during the FAC, Foreign Affairs Council on Monday. Foreign Minister Andriy Sibiha was also there. Of course, it is really concerned, and as this is how also Russia funds its war against Ukraine. By some accounts today, 70% of Russian seaborne oil moves via the shadow fleet. These ships are also old and dangerous. They are not insured and are poorly maintained, so they pose a big environmental risk. Croatia recognized this problem in the early days and endorsed the United Kingdom's call to action on the shadow fleet when it was launched in July last year. Our experts are part of the international working group on the Russian shadow fleet, which was established at the end of August 2024. This group shares also information on the operation and so on. In May this year, as the EU, we sanctioned almost 200 shadow fleet vessels. This was an important part of the 17th package of EU sanctions imposed on Russia over aggression in Ukraine. And of course, as the shadow fleet grows in size, we are ready to do more to prevent these ships from enabling Russia's war against Ukraine and to prevent its threat to the safety and security of seas and oceans. And finally, we will be pleased to take part in the Black Sea Security Forum in Odessa next year to continue also this important discussion. I was also the president of the new commission, and we had a very good cooperation with Black Sea Security Forum and initiative. And thank you so much for your kind invitation. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Dear Minister, thank you so much for your speech and answering the questions. Once again, congratulations to your country for celebrating the 30th anniversary next year. It is not, of course, years or decades that we celebrate achievements, and I'm glad to hear that your country is in the road aligned with the Council of Europe's principles. Dear colleagues, our next business is to consider the changes proposed in the membership of committees. These are set out in document Commission's 2025-05 Addendum 2. Are the proposed changes in the membership of the Assembly's committees agreed to? Agreed. The Assembly will hold its next public sitting this afternoon at 3 p.m. The sitting is adjourned.